Good evening, everyone, council, staff, and members of the public who are hopefully joining us. Welcome to our council meeting for Wednesday, September the 23rd. We have a very busy agenda tonight, so I am going to get right to it. But first, I do need to let you know that we are live streaming this meeting, and to make sure that if you are on the call, or if you're on the screen with us now waiting to speak, if you could make sure that you are on mute. I think everybody is getting very Zoom literate these days, but we've always have one or two incidences usually in the meeting, and we appreciate everybody being very accommodating during this very crazy time. So we also we audio and video record all of our meetings, and it forms part of the public record, and it's retained by the town's retention in accordance with the town's retention bylaw. And if you want more information about that bylaw, you can get that from our clerk's office. So again, welcome, and I'll look to Councillor Nicol. He's always watching to make sure that the live streaming is working fine, and I'm seeing a yes, so good. So thank you. I know it was a gorgeous fall day today, and I'm sure that you have better things to do than be on yet another Zoom call, but we really do appreciate all of the input and the fact that you care so much about your community. So thank you again for being with us. So the first item on our agenda is the open forum, and we have 4 people who've asked to speak in open forum tonight. So I would ask if you could each take about 2 minutes. That would be helpful to us. And we'll start with Marilyn Chung. Do we have Marilyn on the line?
Your worship, excuse me, I do not believe that she has entered the meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, if she does arrive later, we'll just keep going forward, and then if she comes in, we can add her on to the bottom. So next is Giacomo Parisi, and please correct me if I've said that wrong. I apologize.
I thank you, Madam Mayor. The name is spelled actually G as in golf, I-A-C-O-M-O. There's no Giacomo, but anyways, Giacomo. Or even better, call me Jack. How's that? That's easier, probably, right?
Thank you so much, Jack. I can hear you. We can't see you. It's up to you, and you can put your video on or not. It's totally.
It doesn't bother me. I mean, you're more welcome to put the video on if you wish, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to start. Here we go. Start my video. My background is not the greatest. Did I start the video?
Not yet. No.
It's not starting for some reason. It's
oh,
there you go. Hello. As I was saying, my background is not as beautiful as your background, everybody, and I can appreciate the backgrounds of the sunflowers and the scenery. Fantastic. Wow, what can I say? I'm a proud resident also of Innisfil, where there's a beautiful, beautiful background. Through you, Madam Mayor, I thank you, and thank you, members of council and staff, in giving me the opportunity to talk and give my personal opinion on Friday Harbour, which I like to talk about. We just become owners of 3 properties within the resort, where I would love to call it future home and vacation home for my kids. By removing the 60-day clause, it would give me the chance to occupy and live all year round in the wonderful resort. At that point, I could call it home with resort benefits. Allow me to confirm that, unfortunately, I was listening to the last forum that you had, and somebody mentioned that there was difficulties in getting financing from institutions, from bank institutions. Allow me to confirm that that is absolutely true. By obviously removing the 60-day clause, it'll make it easier for us to retain a mortgage on the property. But unfortunately, we had to basically pay it in full at this time. So there goes all my savings. There goes all our savings, all the residents' savings. Let's also talk about, by removing the 60-day regulation, I can call Friday Harbour home, obviously, but one problem that I noticed, Madam Mayor and town councils, is that by not removing it, it just encourages more of an Airbnb situation, more of a short-term rental program. And forgive me for saying that, but I've noticed a lot of problems with these particular short-term rentals. And that becomes a safety issue to me. That becomes overcrowding, noise factor, but also the fact that these Airbnbs today are becoming a party central, and I don't think that our type of homes are designed for party central. Our homes are designed to accommodate people that will enjoy the resort style of lifestyle. I would love to say that I really would love to look forward to say that I can full-time live in Innisfil, full-time live in Harbourfront. And I'm convinced that Friday Harbor, ladies and gentlemen, is definitely going to be the #1 destination, tourist destination of Canada. So I encourage council to adopt a staff recommendation. And I just want to take the opportunity and say thank you to all for all the great work that you have done. And of course, stay safe. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Have a great night.
Thank you so much, Mr. Parisi. You're welcome to stay on with your video off and muted if you don't mind, and listen to the debate. Or if you wish to leave and watch it on live stream or do something else, that's certainly up to you too. So whatever it is you choose to do, but thank you for being here with us tonight, making those comments. Next on my list is Pauline Niles. Pauline, you're still on mute. If there you go.
Okay, sorry about that, Madam Mayor. Some temporary technical difficulty. Having some trouble with the video, so I'll leave it off for now. Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Dolan, Deputy Mayor Davidson, Member of Council, and staff. On behalf of the Resort Association and all the members I represent, I would like to thank staff for their thorough assessment of all the documents presented and the promptness in addressing concerns raised during the public hearing. A favorable decision by Council to adopt staff recommendation will support and sustain the economic growth of Friday Harbor Resort, benefiting all stakeholders and Innisfil. We respectfully request that Council adopt the secondary plan amendments and approve the zoning bylaw amendment in the staff report DSR 148-20. And I would like to say thank you in advance to all members of Council for their support. And I can say, Madam Mayor, there is no other place I would rather be than right here in Innisfil at Friday Harbor during these challenging times dealing with COVID and a pandemic. So I thank the town and all the staff for all the hard work that they have done and put into this. And we look forward to a favorable decision. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you so much, Ms. Niles, for being here this evening and for your comments. Next is Megan Varga. I saw Megan earlier, so I know she's here.
I am.
Hi, Megan, whenever you're ready.
Okay, it says that the host has disabled my video.
Okay, there you are. We can
Okay, hello. So good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, and staff. I appreciate being given the time to address you again about the occupancy change request from Friday Harbor. In my following remarks, Friday Harbor refers to the residents, tenants, developers, investors, and anyone with a financial interest in Friday Harbor. At the end of my comments at the public meeting, I left staff and council with 3 questions that were never answered. I would still like to know if the town and council would have passed the original proposal for Friday Harbor if the developer insisted on a 365 occupancy. Would the Conservation Authority have agreed to the development with a 365 occupancy? And was the original agreement made available for review to council and the public that got the development approved in the first place? The final staff report recommendation to approve the request is very disappointing. Seeing as all costs incurred by the town are recovered from the applicant, resulting in no net financial impact to the municipality for processing the applications, how can you take the staff report recommendation at face value and without bias? I'm sure if I paid a consultant to write one, the recommendation would be to not approve the request with supporting arguments. The fundamental problem with the staff report process is that it is written to support the recommendation only. This leaves the reader with only half the story. It's prejudiced and suggestive to the reader to accept the recommendation based on the facts provided as opposed to the whole story. The staff report speaks to the many letters that accompanied the application in favor of the change. Seeing as those letters were written by people who all have a vested interest in the change and all have Friday Harbour addresses, really the over 400 letters that you received only count as one. Because of the intent of the staff report, the number of letters against the proposed change received by the town after the public meeting when more information was provided is not commented on. Do we know that number? I appreciate that there is little to no impact on the development if the change is made. In fact, Friday Harbour is simply looking for a rubber stamp of approval as all the current rentals and leases are for 1 year. Investors are not suffering any financial losses as they have been thumbing their noses towards council from day one. It is the responsibility of this council to uphold the previous council's decision to limit the occupancy. I know there were so many meetings about Friday Harbour, so there has to be a very good reason for this limitation, although the original agreement was not provided to better educate us on the intent of the restriction. Many say that it was just a matter of time. We knew as soon as this was approved that this ask would come to council eventually. Everyone always says it's a done deal, so why bother? I bother because it's not a done deal, not until after tonight and after the appeal process wait times. As you know, much like the parties who are bringing this request forward have the right to appeal your decision, and so do I. Historically, in my dealings with the town, when there is an appeal, the town will cave to save costs. When this development was originally turned down and appealed, a deal was made. Whether it was for cost savings or not, I do not know. Sadly, that deal has had dramatic negative impact on Lake Simcoe's health, and it is a catalyst for the Lake Simcoe Protection Act and Plan. Since this development is grandparented in, Friday Harbour gets more liberties than just a typical waterfront resident, and now they want 365 occupancy. I challenge council to not take this decision lightly, and I am hopeful that the recommended staff report that was paid for by Friday Harbour is not approved. Big Bay Point has already had so many dramatic changes, and it's time to rest and let it heal. And I thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much, Megan. Appreciate your time as well. So we did Marilyn Chung arrive, Madam Deputy Clerk?
No, I do not believe she has joined the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you all very much for participating in open forum. We do have a big agenda, as I'd mentioned earlier, and we're looking forward to some good debate this evening. So the approval of the agenda, we have had some new items that have come in since the agenda was posted 1 week ago, and they're listed on the screen, so I won't bother reading them all. And I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended with the additions. Councillor Ices and Deputy Mayor Davidson, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So next, I would ask if there's any disclosures of interest, if there's any pecuniary interest perceived or otherwise, if you would let us know now, make that declaration now, or if it becomes apparent to you, please feel free to make that declaration at that time. So seeing none, we'll move on to presentations and petitions. So our very first presentation this evening is on behalf of Matthews House Hospice, and it's their 2020 update. And it looks like Ms. Woodland, the CEO, is with us this evening.
Hi, it's Kim Woodland from Matthew's House. Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the council. Matthew's House would like to start with just a simple thank you for the gift of your support. It's priceless to us and the families that we serve in Innisfil, and we are ever grateful that we are able to be present with the families in Innisfil with the support of the council. So thank you very much. And now, because we thought it would be simpler, there is a video that makes up the remainder of my presentation. So cue to the staff there who are helping with that.
Great, thank you. We're going to need some sound. I'm sure behind those dark screens, there's people working ferociously to get that fixed. Deputy Clerk?
Yes, Your Worship. Our apologies. We had advised the delegate that we may have technical issues with it because the file is quite large and the transition is a little difficult. So we may get it on. I'm just not sure if we are able.
Okay, it's on right now. It's just we're not getting any sound.
Mm-hmm.
We'll give them a few minutes to see if it could be rectified. If you're at home watching this on live stream, don't adjust your volume. There's no sound coming from the video at this time. Okay, Kimberly, it looks like maybe perhaps we could have you turn your camera back on, and I apologize that we're not able to.
That's okay. So with the permission of Your Worship and the council, I will provide the presentation. It's not long.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned, we at Matthew's House are so fortunate to be serving the town of Innisfil and of course the rest of South Simcoe. And I wanted to start with a moment to just commend the town of Innisfil for its participation in all of the initiatives that are currently underway to support mental health in the town of Innisfil. We were happy to see the community health and wellness strategy from November and that it calls out specifically the needs of those who live in Innisfil with regards to maintaining their mental health. And that's very convergent with what the hospice is up to in the town of Innisfil. Last year, we served just over 300 individuals in the town of Innisfil. And it might surprise you to know that most of those individuals were seeking out the programs that we provide that are based on helping people cope with grief and bereavement, but also to cope with concerns that arise from grief and bereavement around anxiety and depression. So our mental health programs. We do provide that service in Innisfil for both children and youth and adults. We provide a program out of the library there entitled Helping Us Understand Grief for the Kids. And also the remainder of those seeking out the programs were adults. And we call those programs our Do Live Well programs. And I'm just gonna call it out now. Most of our adult participants in those programs have the need for help and support and coping strategies to just be able to get out of bed every day, just feel like plain old getting out of bed, and also to figure out how to get meaning back into life. So basically, we're working with them to help them undergo activities that matter to them, so that they survive and that they thrive. Often kind of startling number of folks who are seeking out grief and bereavement services are feeling suicidal. And particularly with the older generation, it's not uncommon when someone dies that shortly thereafter their longtime spouse or partner dies as well. And that's what we mean by thriving, is supporting people to not fail to thrive, as the case may be. So tonight, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Council, for your support. And how can you help us this year? We're hoping that you will just encourage constituents and residents of Innisfil to just call Matthew's House when they are in need, and particularly for those programs I just talked about. And thank you. Coming soon to Innisfil, we are likely to be having a drop-down space at the Rizzardo Health and Wellness Center. Very thrilled about that. And that will also make it much easier for participants who live in Innisfil to access our programs. And we know that behind the scenes, the council is supporting that effort. So thank you very much. And we look forward to working with you in 2021 and 22. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Kim. Very much appreciate it. I'm also going to give you the opportunity to, if you want to give a plug to the Butterfly Gala on Friday, the virtual gala.
Thank you very much, Mayor Doland. Yes, so as council can imagine, we have begun to and are thriving ourselves by providing many things that happen normally at the hospice site or around and about our community in a virtual manner. And one of them is the home edition of the Butterfly Ball, which is happening on Friday evening. And the tickets are all sold out. However, we are encouraging any constituent or resident in South Simcoe, including Innisfil, to check out our website. There's information there about accessing on Rogers the virtual part of the programming from the gala, and it's going to be lots of fun. So don't hesitate to tune in to that on Friday night. And thank you for allowing the time for the pitch.
You're welcome. Yeah, so there's quite a number of items on the auction that you can bid on online if you're so interested, and it's Friday evening.
That's right.
Questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, I want to thank you very much for being here tonight, Kim. And I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, and maybe clerks will circulate a copy of that video to members of council so we can watch it at our leisure. That would be wonderful.
Terrific. Thank you for your time tonight, Your Worship, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. So we need a mover and a seconder to receive the update from Hospice, Matthews House Hospice, and that's moved by Councillor Orsatti and seconded by Councillor Waters. All those in favor? That is carried. Next, we have a presentation by one of our own, and it's Robin Gallo. Robin is our purchasing supervisor, and she's going to give us a presentation on our procurement policies, the wonderful world of procurement policies in municipal government. So thank you so much for being with us, Robin.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, and thanks for having me speak on this wonderful topic. I have a bias, of course. So thanks for letting me speak to council, and of course for everyone who's viewing tonight. I'm going to be talking about procurement in the public sector. So obviously I'm going to be mindful of my time tonight. I don't typically, our training sessions for staff is about 3 hours long. I'm sure you don't want me talking about procurement for the next 3 hours. So what I've done is I've condensed purchasing 101 down into about 15 minutes. Hopefully I can get through for 15 minutes. It's going to be super high level presentation on public procurement, but I've catered it to council in particular. So if it's okay with council, I'm going to go through the presentation, and certainly if there's any questions at the end, happy to address those if that's okay. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the overview of what I'm going to be speaking about tonight. And I'm going to be talking about purchasing services role, the legislative requirements around purchasing, local preference. That's always a topic that kind of circulates through council from time to time. Town and council integrity, limited tendering, which is single sole and emergency purchasing, procurement process, so where we were in the past, present, and where we're going in the future for purchasing. And we're going to end off with council reporting and how that relates to procurements. Next slide, please. These are the three lovely ladies that are in our purchasing services team. So we have, of course, myself, Robin, and Shelley Robinson and Allison Blunt are the two purchasing agents. So if anybody ever needs any purchasing assistance, we can be reached at purchasing@innisfil.ca. if you have any procurement related inquiries, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. So what does purchasing services do? We are housed within the finance department, and we work closely with the internal legal services team as well. Our primary function is obviously to conduct competitive bid processes to procure the goods and services and construction for the town. And primarily any procurement that's a value of $25,000 or more funnels through our service area. So anything that's below $25,000 is considered a low cost purchase. And those purchases are facilitated through the service areas. So they get 3 quotes where possible and practical. So again, anything above $25,000 goes through our area. We also do procurements for in-services, and we also do from time to time purchasing services for the library, and we provide assistance through also to InPower. We're also proud members of a cooperative purchasing group. It's called Georgian Bay Public Purchasing Cooperative. That's a mouthful, I know. It's primarily made up of about 25 public agencies within Simcoe County. And what we do is we pool our resources and we buy common commodities. So for instance, contracts that we're involved with are janitorial supplies, office supplies, road salt, things like that. So basically we achieve economies of scale by purchasing in that manner, and we drive down the unit price for those commodities. We also participate in other group purchasing organizations such as LAS. We have a contract with LAS for our LED streetlight program. We also deal with others such as OECM, Kinetics, and etc. So anytime we can gain efficiencies and on cost savings for administrative or unit price cost savings, that's definitely what we want to achieve and take opportunities for those. We also dabble in contract management. So we provide administrative support for project leaders in the service areas. And we manage the WSIB insurance certificates, the construction bonds, so the labor and material bonds and performance bonds. We also deal with contract extensions, contract change orders, vendor performance, contract disputes, termination if it has to escalate to that. And we partner with legal services for those. And we also deal with additional funding as well. We also deal with purchasing planning, advice, and related services. So typically when a budget is approved, we sit down with the service areas, we map out and plan out the procurements for the year. And we obviously touch base throughout the year to see where we're at. But the main function of that is so that we're going out to the market ahead of our competition. So ideally, we want to put our construction contracts or our RFTs out to the market early in the year, because construction starts in the spring. So we want to make sure we're hitting the market as early in the year as we can, so that we can get the best pricing from contractors. So those are the kind of things that we do with our service areas to try to make sure that we get those procurements out on time. We also deal with disposal of surplus goods. So when assets meet the end of their useful life, and typically they have a net book value of $0 at that point, what we try to do is we sell those on a government bidding auction site called GovDeals. And in the event that the net book value happens to be 10,000 or more, the treasurer has to sign off on approving such a thing. Doesn't happen very often, but it's a check and balance that we have in place as part of our procedures. So, but generally we get great revenue stream from this type of service, and those revenues go back into corporate revenues. We also deal with the P-card program. So managers within the departments determine which of their employees will require a purchasing card. And the purpose of the purchasing cards are primarily for low-cost purchases. At the end of the year, we get a rebate similar to a Costco card. If you have the executive Costco card, you get a rebate at the end of the year for your purchases. So does the town. We deal with BMO. And in 2019, we received approximately $19,000 back in a rebate. And of course, that $19,000 goes back to corporate revenue. So it's a nice revenue stream there for us. Also, of course, we deal with the training, monitoring, and compliance of the bylaw and the procedures as well. Next slide, please. So purchasing in the public sector is certainly quite different than purchasing in the private sector. In the private sector, it's industry standard to wheel and deal with vendors and to get better products, get better pricing and warranties. However, in the public procurement, there's legislative acts, trade treaties, purchasing rules and regulations that apply to how we govern and how we actually execute procurements. So on this slide, you'll see a list of some of them, the Municipal Act, and then there's two of the trade treaties, and then of course the Construction Act. These have fundamentally kind of structured and changed the way we do procurements. I'm not going to go into detail in any of those, being mindful of my time with you this evening, but purchasing services needs to follow the procurement rules and processes, and we have to incorporate these legislative requirements into how we do the procurements. Next slide, please. So legislation actually plays a significant role in local preference as well. Procurement rules outlined in legislation are built on the principles of openness, fairness, and transparency, and reciprocal non-discrimination, which means essentially in respect to local preference, it ensures vendors have access to procurement opportunities regardless of their origin or their physical location. While it makes sense to want to directly support the local economic ecosystem, procurements must be conducted in an open, fair, and transparent manner. and they can't be restrictive to eliminate or substantially reduce competition. So for instance, only allowing local competition. Next slide, please. Now, there's numerous case law examples and white paper reports on local preference, but just to give you an example of one case law example, in May 2019, Parker Johnson Industries Limited versus the Calgary Board of Education. This case involved 2 roof replacements at schools, and the ruling was in regards to a local warranty requirement within the procurement. And the procurement was deemed by the courts to be an unnecessarily restrictive requirement because it prevented some bidders from competing on those works. So when we're structuring our procurements, we need to pay special attention to ensure that we're not unnecessarily restricting competition. Next slide, please. The integrity of the procurement process is absolutely paramount in the public sector. So when we're dealing with procurements, these codes of conduct and conflict of interest policies, among others, are certainly applied. For instance, staff, we have RFPs. So if, for those who don't know what an RFP is, request for proposal, those particular types of procurement methods have an evaluation component that have staff participating in evaluating those submissions. And typically we have 3 to 5 members that participate in the evaluation team, and they have to sign off on a code of conflict of interest form and an employee acknowledgement form, the rules and regulations on how the evaluation is to be conducted. So it's very regimented. So there's strict protocols, and they have to sign off on those before they're able to participate in that evaluation. So on the flip side, for council's actually not part of any procurement. Next slide, please. And the reason for this, it stems from the Bellamy report. The Bellamy report came out in 2005, and it was Commissioner Denise Bellamy who wrote the report. And this was surrounding the City of Toronto computer leasing inquiry. I'm not going to go into detail in terms of the whole issue around it, but it primarily involved allegations of conflict of interest, bribery, and misappropriation of funds surrounding the contracts that came out of it. So in her recommendations, she had 241 recommendations in her report. And in particular, the recommendations around procurement were clear that council members are not to be involved in the procurement process and must separate themselves completely. Now this includes, but it's not limited to, obtaining procurement documents, information on particular procurements, or participating as an evaluation member, even having any role in the procurement award, and etc. So this actual recommendation is incorporated into the town's purchasing bylaw in section 418, where the town council is not permitted to participate in the procurement process. Now, fundamentally, the purpose of this is to preserve the integrity of the procurement process so that there's no political influence, there's no bias, there's no internal or external lobbying, or internal or exclusion or external collusion. So whether that's perceived or real, that's fundamentally the reason. Next slide, please. So anybody who's watching the headlines lately certainly knows these 2 fellas on the screen, the We Charity controversy that's happening right now at a federal level. So this is Craig and Mark Kielberger, and this surrounds the Canada Student Service Grant Program. And like I said, it's in the headlines right now. It's currently under investigation with the federal government. And in particular, it involves top government officials, namely the Prime Minister Trudeau and the former Finance Minister Bill Morneau, and possibly others. Obviously, it's under investigation. But the point here is it directly has political ties to a specific procurement. So this is what the town of Innisfil most certainly needs to avoid. We don't want to have town of Innisfil in some type of scandal, whether it's perceived or real. And this is fundamentally why council has to separate themselves from the procurement process. I would urge anyone who's on council, if you're ever questioned about a procurement, regardless of what stage it's at, please funnel those questions over to purchasing services. We're happy to address those. That's what we're here for. So certainly forward those inquiries on to us, please. Next slide, please. Limited tendering. This is certainly something that's a new term. The trade treaties are they're kind of bundling single sole and emergency purchases up into a new term, limited tendering, of course, to confuse everybody. But essentially, limited tendering is when a public agency procures goods or services without a competitive bid process. Now, a sole source, because a lot of people get this confused, what's a sole source, what's a single source? A sole source is when there's no other sources out in the marketplace that can provide those goods or services. So an example of that would be Enbridge, Rogers, or Bell. And a single source is when we're specifically picking a vendor. Meanwhile, out in the marketplace, there's other vendors that can provide the same services or goods or similar. Now, in the purchasing bylaw and the trade treaties, there's a specific list of eligible reasons that allow us to use limited tendering. And if they meet or exceed the trade treaty thresholds, an award notification and eligible reason code, the one that we've used, has to be publicly posted. So for instance, if we do a competitive bid process and we're procuring for ABC widgets, and we get absolutely no bids in for that particular solicitation, we are now eligible to go out and single source to a direct award to a vendor because we've done our due diligence, we've done a competitive bid process openly, publicly, but we just didn't happen to get any bids. So that is actually one of those eligible reason codes. There are a number of them, but they're very restrictive. So in terms of emergency purchases, there's 7 reasons. And for instance, an example of that would be a state of emergency, AKA, what we're living through right now, COVID-19. So another example of an emergency would be protecting public property. So if we had a water main break, or if we had a road that would collapsed or washed out from a rainstorm, that would be considered an emergency. So at the end of the day, if the procurement doesn't fit one of those eligibility codes or reasons, then we're not permitted to do a single sole or emergency purchase. Next slide, please. So over the last decade in Ontario, there's been a huge transformation from manual procurement processes over to electronic processes. And that certainly continues to evolve. We're integrating automation and we're considering artificial intelligence into our procurement processes where we can. In the past, as you know, many people who are on the council today remember when we used to have hard copy submissions. We'd have vendors racing to town hall to try to submit their bid before 2 p.m., before the buzzer went off. And we'd have oodles of bidders in the lobby frantically calling their subcontractors, getting pricing, writing down their bids, putting it in an envelope, sealing it, and rushing to customer service. So as a result, and also we would have people calling, calling the 911 saying, hey, I'm stuck in a traffic jam on the 400, I'm going to be late, or they're stuck in a winter snowstorm. So we would often have late submissions as a result. And because of the procurement rules, we're not able to take late submissions. So unfortunately, we had people who weren't really happy about that situation. We also had lots of bid irregularities with the old manual process because, like I said, people were frantically writing down their pricing. They'd make calculation errors. They would omit bid bonds by mistake. So critical information that was missing, unfortunately, we'd have to reject bids. And we used to do public tender openings as well. So back in the day, we would have the town clerk who would actually facilitate the entire process. And then I would be joining the town clerk, and then we'd have a purchasing agent as well, and a town staff member, another from whoever the service area for the procurement is. And then we'd also have all the bidders in the room, and anybody from the public who would want to attend. Typically it was the bidders. So then it would be very formal process. Here he, we have a bid from ABC company. And so then the clerk would hand it over to me. I would open it. I would announce what the price was. And then the next person would write down the price. It was a very formal process. And then at the end of the meeting, everybody would know who bid on the project and ultimately what all the prices were. So leaving the meeting, they would know what the unofficial results were and who the lowest bidder was. And then of course, following that, it would be the long process of, reviewing the bids. Were they all compliant? Was there, we'd have to scan them all, evaluate them, and eventually we would award that bid. Next slide, please. So fast forward to today, Innisfil has been using fully electronic bid submissions now since 2017. So we no longer have issues with late bid submissions. They're all electronically submitted, date and time stamped. So bidders can bid and submit everything from the comfort of their home. And so not only that, we virtually eliminated bid irregularities as a result of this transition as well, because the bid system is set up in a way that the bidder has to submit the critical information in order for the system to accept the bid. So it's virtually eliminated bid irregularities as a result, which is fantastic, both for the town and also for the bidders. And certainly there's no need for a public tender opening anymore. It's an obsolete process, especially since we're doing electronic bidding, because the bid results are actually posted publicly within seconds of the bid closing. So for instance, our bids typically close at 11 a.m. So at 11:01, you have the unofficial results. So all of the bidders can see who bid and what the unofficial bid prices are within a minute of the bid closing. And that's public knowledge. Anybody can access that information. Our bidding system is bidsandtenders.ca. And yeah, and like I said, it's publicly viewable. The awards are on that as well. So once the award is official, it gets posted as well. Now, the old way we used to do awards is we used to post it in the local newspaper. Now, like I said, it's publicly posted once it's official on our website, or sorry, on the bidding site. Now, certainly with COVID-19, Innisfil is in a much better position than a lot of other municipalities who are still using the manual hand-in process. Because what I found was there was lots of municipalities struggling on how they were going to conduct procurements, because most town halls were closed. And where town of Innisfil, we could still continue with our procurement process 100% working remotely. So we didn't have that same blip in the system where others did. What COVID has certainly done, if there's a silver lining in this, certainly has highlighted the need for organizations to adopt automation and look more seriously at artificial intelligence to improve the processes and certainly to become more resilient as an overall organization. So reducing the manual processes where possible certainly improves efficiencies and cost-saving opportunities. So certainly gone are the days of a handshake and no written contract. A municipality has to work to mitigate the risks associated with procurements, and certainly automation is one way of doing that. Next slide, please. And council reporting. So I'm not going to go into huge detail on this, but in our purchasing bylaw, there is a section on council reporting in section 9.11. And there's 2 sections within it. The staff report for information, there's 3 reasons in which a staff report for information would go to council. And then there's 9 reasons for when a staff report will go for a council approval. So when, for FYIs, for the staff report for information, an example would be anytime we award a contract with a value of $1 million or more, a staff report will come to council, advising council of that. Secondly, limited tendering. So anytime we do a single sole or emergency purchase of 50,000 or more, another staff report will come to council as an FYI. And lastly, if there's a contract over budget and it's between 25,000 and 50,000 over budget, another staff report will come to council advising. So administratively, the CAO and the treasurer has delegated authority to approve an award over budget, but up to 50,000. So an example of when a staff report would come to you for approval would be if we were proposing an award for a contract, but it was over 50,000 over the budget. And also when we're shovel in the ground, sometimes when we're in the midst of a contract, there's a contract change order that potentially bumps over the $50,000. At that point, we would come back to council and ask for approval for that as well. And there's other reasons as well. There's one that is an extremely rare one, would be if we're waiving the provisions of the purchasing bylaw. But certainly the context of the reason why we're choosing certain things or recommending certain things to council is fully outlined on that staff report. So in a nutshell, there's obviously going to be sometimes the staff reports that are going to be coming forth, either for information purposes or to get approval. Next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation, and hopefully I've provided you with a high-level overview of what procurement in the public sector is all about, and hopefully that's educated the viewing audience as well. If there's any questions, I would be happy to take those.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gallo. That was really interesting. Questions or for Ms. Gallo? Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question too. When you're doing your purchasing, is it for all departments of the town, like libraries, the operations and everything else? So you do that for everyone?
Robin?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Payne. Through your worship to Councillor Payne. We actually do the procurements for all of the departments within the town. So that's the operations, engineering, planning, like all of the departments within the town. However, from time to time, we do assist the library board with some of their procurements, but they do have their own governing board. They have their own purchasing policy, but we do offer assistance with that. We do the procurements for in-services, and from time to time, we do assist in power. So we are all together, we all participate in the purchasing cooperative group that I mentioned before earlier in my presentation. So that's the Georgian Bay Public Purchasing Cooperative. So we're all members within that, that group, but certainly from time to time they need purchasing advice and services, and we're happy to help them out.
Okay, thank you. I just have one other question. When I was working for the city of Mississauga, they had a store in the town hall where residents and staff could go in and buy jackets, hats, shirts, pens, you name it, they had it. And it was quite successful as far as making money on it. And it was quite popular. A lot of people would just come in and just buy whatever they, if they were visiting, they would buy a hat from the city of Mississauga. So I was just wondering if there may be something that we could think about doing as a town. Just a comment. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carolyn. I'm sorry, Councillor Payne. And yeah, I know Simcoe County has that as well. So you can buy Simcoe County coats and everything. Members of the public can. So that is a good suggestion. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. It was quite informative. Questions that I have two questions. One has to do with legislative requirements. Often you hear about Buy American And even though we have an agreement between Canada and US, you often hear many states, many municipalities who have Buy American policies. Is that legal, or is that something that municipalities are allowed to do on either side in terms of limiting the procurement process?
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Through Mayor Dolan to Councillor Waters. Thank you for that question. The procurement methods that the United States do, how they procure things are quite different than how Canadian provinces and municipalities operate. In terms of, Buy Canadian, or how we can structure our procurements to cater to certain requirements, we are permitted to procure based on operational or specifics, like CSA standards, for instance. We can be specific to that degree, but not locally, local preference. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, we can't necessarily say, Buy Canada or Buy Ontario.
Yeah, what I was kind of getting at is that there is obviously some legislative requirements in terms of trade policies between Canada and the United States, and you would think that those would cover that type of purchasing, whether or not it's in Canada purchasing or Buy American purchasing. So I guess my question is, they must have to abide by those same rules as we do in terms of, kind of pointing the pointer in terms of where you're allowed to purchase.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with how the statutes and so forth work. They've got a quite a bit different procurement structure in the United States. So the two trade treaties that basically govern ours, which was on one of the slides, is the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. So that's how we procure within Canada, and the other one is externally with the European. Okay. So it's the Canadian European Trade Agreement. So how they operate in the United States is quite different.
Okay, just a quick second question. In terms of just educating the public and ourselves, when it comes to lowest bid, there's often complaints about having to take the lowest bid on something because it's not always the best deal. We sometimes get burned on that. So could you kind of highlight how we handle, how we get around that in certain cases when lowest bid isn't exactly what we want?
Yes, there are strategies and yes, that it is a procurement rule that we have to award to the lowest compliant bid. However, there are strategies in making sure that we have qualified bidders who are bidding in the first place. And the workaround with that is doing a pre-qualification at the onset. So we pre-qualify bidders based on their number of years that they've been in business and so many different other factors that we take into consideration. We do a full-blown evaluation, and then we would have 4 or 5 bidders that are pre-qualified to bid on the subsequent tender. So then at the end of the day, any of those 5 who are bidding are fully compliant, and we are satisfied with whoever is going to be the lowest bid from that result.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Ms. Gallo? Thanks again for being with us. I know we just got the tip of the iceberg, but it was really informative, I think, both for council and also for members of the public who maybe don't understand the depth of the process. And also, we're very fortunate to have somebody with your qualifications, Robin, and very well thought of with your peers in the purchasing world. And so thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, you too. So now we have recommendation to receive the presentation. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Payne. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next, we have a delegation. Delegation this evening is from Cheryl Shindrick, the Executive Vice President of Geranium, and Stephen Rise, who is the Vice President of Fork Limited. Whenever you're ready, and thank you for your patience while we've got to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Dolan, Deputy Mayor Davidson, and members of council, town staff, and ladies and gentlemen joining us online this evening. I am Cheryl Shindrick, Executive Vice President with Geranium, co-developer of Friday Harbour. And I am joined by my colleague, Stephen Reese of Fork Limited, who will be speaking shortly. I'm pleased to speak to you this evening in connection with item 8C2 on your agenda concerning Friday Harbour. I'm speaking on behalf of the Resort Association, who are the applicant for the proposed secondary plan and zoning bylaw amendments that are the subject of the recommendation report DSR 148-20 in your package this evening. The RA represents the 5 existing condominium corporations at Friday Harbour, their boards of directors, and over the 660 constituent unit owners who join me in supporting the staff report and the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments that are before you this evening. I am also honored to speak on behalf of the Friday Harbour Resort Partnership, led by Managing Partner Mr. Jim DeGasperis, whose unrelenting commitment to Innisfil and to Friday Harbour inspires us day in and day out in our work to deliver the world-class resort that Friday Harbour already is and still to become. Your Worship, over the past several months, the Friday Harbour development team, together with the Resort Association, led by Mr. James DiRenzo, have been working with your professional staff as they analyzed our applications to remove the occupancy restrictions from the resort. Mr. DiRenzo's CEO imprint will forever be indelibly marked on Friday Harbour, and for that we owe him a great debt of gratitude. I want to recognize the efforts of your professional staff, led by CAO Jason Rayner and his team, led by Tim Kane and Mary Nordstrom and Steve Montgomery in the planning department, and Dan Taylor in economic development, together with their team of professional external peer reviewers, Sorensen Gravely Lowe's and Tate Economic Consultants, all working closely with the professional planners at the County of Simcoe, David Parks and Dan Amadeo. This group has really left no stone unturned and has conducted a very detailed analysis of the applications and have been very thorough in their efforts in terms of ensuring that we stay true to the Friday Harbour vision for a world-class resort, that the resort character and the function is maintained without the occupancy restrictions. They consulted with the Conservation Authority, who had no objection to the applications. And of course, all their work is focused on ensuring that Friday Harbour continues to deliver its many economic and social benefits for the community. I want to commend this group for their professionalism and thoroughness, which is reflected in the comprehensive staff report and official plan and zoning bylaw amendments before you this evening. So to reiterate, we are here this evening to speak in support of the staff report and the recommendations set out therein, and to also request council's support and approval of them. Madam Mayor, at the same time that we've been working with your staff on these applications, we've also been advancing our amenity planning for the resort. For this work, we are being assisted by world-renowned global entertainment and resort consultants, Fork Limited. You will recall having heard from Mr. Stephen Reese at our public meeting earlier. So while Fork's work is still ongoing, we'd like to provide you with a very brief progress report on their work. However, before I call on Mr. Reese to share with you the work that they are now engaged in, let me first update you on some of the initiatives the Friday Harbour team is working on delivering for 2021. you will see a host of new retailers coming to the Village Boardwalk to fill out the West End shops. There will be an espresso bar, a pub, a bakery, a sushi restaurant, a salon, a pharmacy and walk-in clinic, a pet store, a toys and candy shop, and last but not least, a women's clothing store. Those shops together will occupy approximately almost 17,000 square feet of space. Secondly, early in the new year, we are looking forward to celebrating the grand opening of the Lake Club at the west end of the boardwalk. That beautiful structure that you can see is now well underway in terms of its construction. We've also been working on the design of a new roundabout at the intersection of Big Bay Point Road, the 13th line, and the 25th side road. And we look forward to delivering this, well, a beautiful piece of transportation infrastructure in the next year. And flowing from the commitments that we've made that are embedded in the planning instruments before you this evening, we will be implementing a professionally managed Friday Harbour rental program to be operational before the end of 2021 to be able to offer professionally managed short-term stays at the resort. And we will be working with FORAC and your staff to complete an updated resort amenities master plan to guide us over the longer term. And so with that segue, I'd like to now call on Stephen Rees of FORAC to present the work that they are doing in the boardwalk area that encompasses the pier, the Compass Square, and are thinking about the hotel precinct. Stephen,
Thanks, Sharon. Thank you, Your Worship, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Town Council, residents of Innisfil who are very interested in what's going on here, and of course, our thanks to municipal staff as well for the excellent input we've been getting along the way. I have a few short minutes and a few slides to share with you, and I think for a second, I just want to say that Cheryl shortened my presentation a little bit by giving you some background into what we're doing. So I'm not going to spend a lot more time on that, except to say that we started in July, late July. We have been crawling all over Friday Harbour every opportunity we get. We've had recent operational meetings with Friday Harbour, and you'll see what those are going to relate to in a couple of minutes. So every time we come, there's something new to be learned, but we also become more and more committed to the idea that we have a great resort in our backyard here in Southern Ontario, and it's not just an accident that it's successful. It takes a lot of hard work. It's a microcosm of many economic factors that all come together to make it successful. And so I think that everybody who supports the progress here is to be given thanks. So if I was going to take over my own screen, but maybe I'll let staff click it through if I just give them commands. So first, next slide if possible. So I'm going to give you a quick update. Cheryl's already mentioned that the amenities and entertainment study is ongoing. We did a benchmarking exercise this midsummer, and we are now launching into the second part of it, which is to do some detailed programming with the group at the resort. In the process of doing that, getting to know the resort and starting to look at it through the eyes of the guest, we came across a few recommendations, and you'll see those in a minute. But that has led to some priority projects. One is the planning of a hotel and integrating that into the overall master plan that has been in place before we arrived. Next is the design of an iconic structure for the pier, but it's not just sculpture. It's got a very functional purpose that we'll describe in a minute. And then finally, something that maybe is more jargon to us than to anyone else, but public realm enhancement. In other words, what do you see when you arrive and you walk through the resort as a guest, as a day visitor, or as a resident of the community or a resident of the resort? What do you do there, and what's it like to be there? So that includes everything from the boardwalk to the Compass Plaza to the pier to the walk down to the beachfront. And so that public realm is, again, not accidental. It's got to be something that keeps people engaged and makes them want to come back time and time again. That's the success of any great project. So the next slide. So as you're familiar with the existing master plan, and maybe this is a little blurry for some reason. If you're familiar with the existing master plan, you know that everything around the boardwalk on the north edge of the boardwalk is the commercial development. There's, I think, as Cheryl said, by the time those new commercial units open, there'll be over 60,000 square feet of successfully operating sustainable types of commercial offerings for our guests and visitors. And we are in the process of looking at the current hotel site and making another recommendation related to it. The pier is where a lot of the temporary stage and events have been conducted over the year. And there's a plan for a current amphitheater, which is at the bottom of the hill when you come down from Big Bay Point Road, and you will see the waterfront, and there was supposed to be an open space there. There's a couple of other condo developments that were to the north of that. So in our evaluation, if you go to the next slide, you know, what makes a great resort experience, there were a few things that we recognized. Keep going. Of course, there's the existing resort hotel. But what is really hard to deny once you're there is that there's a really strong movement from, we'll say nominally from west to east and back again, as people walk along the boardwalk and flaneur, as the French say, you know, just poking around, looking around, sniffing and smelling the coffee and the roses, and dipping in and out of attractions that are important to them or of interest to them. And what we kind of noticed here is that there's to the west, it's about nature, about maybe a little more solitude as we move towards the great reserve land that has been protected on the resort, or to the east, southeast as we move towards the lake, and it's more public and more open, and obviously taking people to this great asset that we have here in the middle of Friday Harbour, which is this probably, you know, a very significant harbor, a marina, and access to Lake Simcoe. If you just click through, I think this is a little more dynamic than, so as you can see, these are the things that we recognized right there at the top of the hill where the eyeball is. That was the aha moment, the thing that we were looking for. When do you feel like you've arrived, and when do you feel like you have a great sense of this wonderful place? And that view corridor, that thing, that kind of wedge between the urban fabric that's on the west side right now and what's being planned on the east side, that will always be preserved as a view shed to really entice people down the hill to that landing spot, that red dot. From there, that's their orientation point, and they go left or right to wherever their destination is. And then our goal is to make sure that when they walk back, it's still worth the effort to make the trek. And so far, it's been successful, where our goal here is to strengthen it. So one of the things that we recommended, I think in the next click, is that for that view shed to really start to set up the next stage of development for development along the harbor front and up the hill, there needs to be a bookend, some other significant moment that is running 365 days a year. And in our view, the best thing for doing that and for animating the resort in that area is not to put a hotel in behind the lake club, but rather to have a hotel prominently positioned on the boardwalk and make it feel that when a day or an overnight guest comes to stay at Friday Harbour, they are in Friday Harbour, not on the edge or just behind something. So to that point, the next slide, I think, It's all in order to continue to activate the resort. The green zone of the boardwalk is there today and will be 60,000 feet of commercial soon. That drives a lot of visitation and a lot of interest. And as we move southeast towards the lake, we have a new goal or a new challenge, which is to make that interesting as much as the existing section of the boardwalk is. Next slide. So it begs the question, you know, what's happening on the pier, and how does it contribute? So next slide. So our recommendation to the resort is to move what was going to be the function of the amphitheater to a signature location that everybody within shouting distance is going to hear about, shouting virtually. So I'm talking all across Ontario. It's something that, how many waterfront venues are there where you're in the middle of a great marina and you feel you're surrounded on all sides by water and the promise of the leisure craft being around you and being a part of it, the feeling of it. And then to bring a hotel to that former location for the amphitheater, and partway up the hill to build a strong connection to the water, a dynamic hotel that's got conferencing, banquet rooms, meeting rooms, etc., and amenities that will drive more and more guests to Friday Harbour. Next. And as I said earlier, to activate that corner. And then this red striped arc, the whole thing is going to be part of creating a zone where people have lots to do. They feel that it's in the public realm. It feels like and functions as open space, and people are welcome to stroll and look into anything that piques their interest. So, in addition to that, the next slide will show that we are recommending that instead of the former hotel site remaining a hotel, we look at a resort accommodation plot there. The type of accommodation we're talking about it's still, right now, it's ruminating between service apartments, types of rental units, or residential elements that can be rented out. And then same thing up the hill, north of the hotel site, the new, newly labeled hotel site is another piece of the same thing. And that would also connect directly to the hotel. So there's the opportunity there for the hotel to manage resident or rental in those units if that's the part of the business model. Okay, next slide. So I don't have a lot. We've just last week started putting our program together for the hotel. It's all pretty boring square foot areas allocated to various units, uses, and so on. So what I'd like to do now is jump to the pier. Next slide. So these are a series of study models, and they're kind of in isolation here. You're not really seeing them in the context of the waterfront or the shoreline and anything else yet. But I think you'll recognize where we are. The long, narrow, elevated walkway to the left, coming from left to right, is the jetty, and that's the jetty that takes us right back to the Compass Square that's in front of the LCBO. And that jetty comes down here to the big rectangular space where most of the events, certainly temporary stage and shows have occurred. And what the concern here, or the question is here, is what would be an iconic looking structure that could function as providing weather and sun principally, and some rain protection, so that when people are out here, part of a major event or even a weekly, you know, a midweek event, there's always some protection. And there's also, and you know, basically creates an identity for the resort. This iconic piece of sculpture has a function. So we're going to just see a few slides here, and I'll just describe them as we go around. We have looked at this. That's an early design sketch here. We were starting to look at it from what you would see in the back of this. Beyond would be the Lake Club, and behind the camera is the Harbour Master's house, Harbour Master's headquarters, and to the right is the boardwalk. And I'm sorry that we didn't have time to get all of this model built into a contextual one, but we will be, and in the future, putting this into a live model that we can really then rotate around and see what it's like to be in Friday Harbour with all the buildings that are around it today, and see what this really feels like. But you can see that it's a tall structure. It's high off the ground to allow us to get a stage in behind. Here's a better example of it. You can see the height of people here, the stage, and its backup areas, it's a backstage and so on, would still fit easily under that canopy, so that from all the other angles of view, it still is a perforated view, so you can see through it. As you can see, the camera's eye right now is probably 15 feet above the boardwalk, the little fingers going out to the boats. So we're elevated just to give it a bit of a bird's eye feel. But down low, I think there's a couple other shots that will give us a better feel as from a point of view. This is an aerial, and we're really, it's three parabolic curves that sheets of fabric, of a special fabric that can take the weather and the sun and provide cover for our guests. And they kind of overlap each other. It's almost like a mama manta ray with her two babies swimming under her arms. And the idea is to provide as much shade, and you see a few of these are sun and shade studies, and a few of them are for getting the proper scale from the point of view of the people on the boardwalk, or people who are coming into the harbor on their boats, or people who are sitting in a restaurant and cafe just admiring the view. Keep going. And then this is a test of an average, what we'd say is an average busy day on the board or on the pier stage area. There's a couple hundred people here. We know that we can do more than that. And what we're not showing at this point is how busy the jetty and the Compass Plaza gets. I think you were there this last weekend. There were something like 6,000 people. So this would be just a small component of that. But the scale of the events here, we're talking about everything from live performance to wedding parties, to corporate events, to car shows or car launches, to vendor markets and that sort of thing. Anything that the imagination of the resort management team in their event programming can do to create more and more draw to Friday Harbour. And you don't have to pay to come out here to walk around. You might not be able to always get in because of safety issues in terms of crowding and so on. But I mean, that's a good problem to have. People are saying you've got to get there. So I think there's one more slide. It's another view of this, but I'm very happy to share this with you today, and keep your eyes tuned or your ears tuned into this channel, and we will try and show you more as we progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So any questions of Ms. Schindruck or Mr. Rees? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Waters.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I thought a great presentation, really intriguing in terms of what some plans you've got there as a a person who visits Friday Harbor on a regular basis. In fact, I had lunch at the beach club today. I kind of like what I see, but I also see some conflicting uses going on, and I'm just kind of curious how you're going to manage them. Is that the proposal tonight is asking us to consider full-time residents, and in fact, we had one gentleman talk about wanting to move to Friday Harbor full-time as a resident. My question is, with the events and the hotel and possibly Airbnbs, and I think I heard something about apartment opportunities where the old hotel will be. It seems that you're going to, if you have a combination of full-time and Airbnbs with people who are going to be looking for, high-end entertainments or parties, and the event space, it seems that one doesn't work well with the other. Full-time people living there does not work well with people looking for a high energetic experience at Friday Harbor. So can you, and especially around the Airbnbs where you really have no control over who's renting and who's not renting at that facility. So I'm just kind of curious how you plan to manage all those different interests in a wonderful location.
Thank you.
You want to grab that, Cheryl?
Sure, Stephen. Thank you, Councillor Waters. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Waters, we are focused on delivering a resort experience at Friday Harbor. And I think it's fair to say there will be something for everyone. The gentleman who spoke earlier, who looks forward to living there, we welcome him and imagine that he will be very happy there. At the same time, the commitment to delivering a four-season resort experience here in Innisfil at Friday Harbor it continues to be enshrined in the approval documents and the amendments that are before you this evening. The occupancy restrictions are critical, are undermining the success of the resort today. That you heard that over and over at the public meeting. You heard that again this evening by a unit owner at Friday Harbor. It's critical that we remove those restrictions so that this resort can flourish and continue to evolve consistent with the vision that's been set out and is being reaffirmed through the process that we're going through, that we've gone through, and that we will continue to work with your staff on. And so I think there is a community that's unique as this. We manage these challenges every step of the way. We have had great success so far, and I have every confidence. I hope you will have confidence in us to continue to manage that going forward, Councillor.
Thank you.
If I could add, Your Worship, in the world of resorts and projects of this nature, there's a wide range of formulas where there is always going to be on-site residents, people who want to live that lifestyle the rest of their lives, or as long as they are happy to be there. And then there are those who are day visitors who just come in and, like yourself, Councillor Waters, where you go there as a regular guest and enjoy it. And then there's the overnight stay, and that's the commitment that the development has made and is required to do, which is to bring a hotel and that kind of occupancy so that we increase the let's say the dynamics on the site. And there are challenges to that. There's absolutely challenges about the difference of opinion about noise and light and so on. And that's one of the reasons that that model was done, so we can start to address those as quickly as possible with the residents in particular, as well as the resort association, and start looking at how to design these things so that they don't cause problems for people who are there today and those who want to be there in the future. And I would say, look at places like Whistler, Tremblant, world-class resorts in their own right, very different from Friday Harbor. Those are ski resorts. That's their raison d'etre. Ours is a harbor marina resort, but all the same challenges. And you're right, it is going to be complex, but that's what makes this interesting as a visitor or as a person who lives there. So I think it's a great challenge, and I think we're all up for it.
Thank you. Councillor Water?
Just a quick follow-up. Often people see a conflict between hotels and Airbnbs. Hotels see Airbnbs as competition. How do you view individual condo owners wanting to turn their units into Airbnbs on a permanent basis? Is that not internal competition with the hotel experience which you're hoping to develop?
If I knew the answer to that, we wouldn't have this discussion going on in every municipality where the hotel associations are screaming blue murder. It's something that I think, as we start to look at the structure of ownership here and the role that the team that Cheryl just mentioned earlier this evening, that we are going to have a professional resort management team on property, so that the necessity of an Airbnb isn't what some people feel it is today. And that's work to be done. I can't, that's not my area of expertise. But all I can say is I see them making the right moves to solve these challenges.
I would concur that I think that the professionally run management, rental management program together with a hotel can coexist very nicely with the residential units in the resort. And so we will look forward to being in a position to being able to offer all of those to either the unit owners or the visitors coming to the resort.
Thank you very much. The reason I had asked that question was because I know many councillors are concerned that the hotel will not happen. And so we want to ensure that it happens. And one of the things that may not allow it to happen is if you see that internal competition going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Payne?
Your Worship, I just have one question, and excuse my ignorance, but for what reason was the 360 days put to 300 with 185 consecutive days? What was the reasoning behind that, and how did that affect the development?
Cheryl, did you want to take that one?
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Payne, if I understand your question, the occupancy restrictions, the 300-day rule as it's come to be known, or the 185 consecutive day, were a part of a suite of measures that were put in place to ensure that Friday Harbour developed as a resort and not as a conventional residential development like you'd find anywhere else. And so, the occupancy restrictions were just one aspect. There was all kinds of other requirements that were in place on the development of this resort, which included building as a first phase the key resort infrastructure. That was the marina, the boardwalk, the golf course, and a number of other resort amenities that had to go in day one in order to, again, start this characterization of this development as something very different than a conventional community. Secondly, we had special legislation that was passed, and that is in place today. That was in 2010. That act required that the lands be designated resort, and that designation be registered on title, and that all unit owners who purchased in this development become members of this resort association. And then the establishment of the resort association, which is to program the resort, run activities, provide communications to the unit owners, liaise with government. It has a whole host of responsibilities. And so all of those things are part of what makes Friday Harbour Friday Harbour. And the occupancy restrictions was just one of the things on that list. So that's it. At the time that we were securing the initial approvals, it was a plan on a piece of paper. And so these were the suite of things that it was thought of at the time that would help to ensure that Friday Harbour became a resort community. And so now with the passage of time, we can see how much is there, the extensive amount of amenities, and by all assessments, including a company like Forac, who works around the world, has determined and is of the opinion that this is a resort development. Your staff agree with that, the peer reviewers agree with it. And so now that we have been living with these occupancy restrictions for a number of years, you heard from the residents, you heard from us how they're hindering the success of the resort and hindering its ability to go to the next level. And that is why we've asked to have those occupancy restrictions removed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. Great presentation. Obviously, this council and past council have worked with Friday Harbour. We've seen so many changes to the design of the resort itself. I just want to confirm, tonight, we're not considering approving site plan revisions to move a hotel, correct? We're only looking at the OPA possibility to remove the 65 days, because I would have some concerns about the impact to these existing residents who are back onto where that new hotel location would be. Just confirming that we're only looking at the OPA, we're not looking at site plan revisions, correct?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Nicol, absolutely, Councillor Nicol. What we're intending to do this evening was to give you a little bit of a sneak peek at this design work that we're working on. And of course, we need to go through a thorough process with your team, and we will do that. And we will be back before you as a result of the completion of our review process with your staff.
Thank you. Mr. Kane, anything to add?
No, Your Worship. I was going to take the opportunity to clarify, but Ms. Schindrick's done that wonderfully. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, that's good, because I was going to bring up that question as well. I appreciate the presentation, because it, part of the concern is that it will become a settlement area or a community, more of a traditional community. So to see that, more work is being done to enhance the resort concept is helpful. But tonight, the only issue we'll be dealing with is what's in the staff report. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I want to thank you both for being here, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
So could I please have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation for information? Councillor Payne and Councillor Fowler. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, Council. So now we are we good? Do we need to take 5 minutes? Should we just plow along here? Keep going. Okay, I'm seeing that. Good. All right. So number 7 is County Council, Municipal Association, Conservation Authorities, and committee updates. Does anyone have any updates from any committees that they sit on behalf of the town? Seeing none, I just have a couple. First, the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit Board of Directors met last week. Again, there is some worrying trends in the area that Dr. Gartner it has some concerns about. He's particularly worried about non-regulated social gatherings, and was pleased to see the province include our health unit in the lower restrictions for the social gatherings. He's particularly concerned about holiday season being Rosh Hashanah, Thanksgiving, Christmas even perhaps, when people move indoors in larger, and they're just asking everybody. I know everybody has fatigue, COVID fatigue, and a little bit of COVID rebellion, but we're going to ask everybody to please continue to be extra vigilant. We cannot let our guard down now. Also, I attended South Simcoe Police Services Board meeting Monday night. Mostly business as usual, except that it will be our last meeting with our Deputy Chief of Police, Robin McCleary Downer. She's served us so well, and was the first female deputy chief for the town of Innisfil, and we'll surely miss her. And unfortunately with COVID, it's going to be a little harder for us to let her know that. She will continue her role, at least for the time being. She is, for those of you who might not know, an aide de camp. Actually, I think she's the deputy aide de camp for the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. So she has a role to play with the Lieutenant Governor, and she will continue in that role and wear her South Simcoe police uniform, retired with pride in that role. And the last update I had was in regards to the library board. The town had a vacancy on our library board, and it at first it perceived that there might be an issue. We only had, with a week to go, only had 2 applications. But I guess there's a lot of Innisfilians who are like me that like to leave things to the last minute, because we ended up with 9 applications for 1 position. And I have to tell you that these applications, all of them were exceptional. It was such a really hard choice and a good long discussion to come up with some sort of a consensus. And I'll tell you, if we could just put 8 more chairs at the table, that would be what I would have voted for, but unfortunately that isn't in the cards. So we did have to make a difficult decision that will be announced to all of the recipients tomorrow. But I am pleased to welcome, I've lost my notes, Dr. Raj Grover, who is the new board appointed. And Dr. Grover is from Ward 6, which has been, we haven't had a representative from Ward 6 on the library board for many years in my recollection. So happy to have that filled in. I just want to say again how pleased we were with any one of the 9 would have been an excellent candidate. And we've asked both the clerk staff and the library staff to reach out to those who did apply and see if there's some other ways that we could serve, because we really need all of you to stay committed and engaged in your town, and the amount of work that you already put into your town is just absolutely fabulous. So again, congratulations to Dr. Grover, and thank you to everyone who put their name forward. Is there anyone else that has any comments for this section? Seeing none, we'll move into the consent list. So for those of you who are new to this might seem like a bit of a bingo game. We go through all of the reports, the staff recommendations. If council is happy with the staff recommendation, they have no questions and they will simply let it pass. If they pull it, that means that they might clarity from lots of staff questions. And of course, if there's just a comment on the item, it doesn't have to be pulled. We can just simply make that comment and then move on. So we'll start with that consent list. Item A1 was the 9th. A2, the council meeting minutes dated September the 9th. B1, the Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee report dated September the 8th. C1, the staff report regarding the town of Innisfil, Bradford, West Gwillimbury Shared Fire Services Assessment. Councillor Sadi? Question, or you want to pull it?
Refer it. Pull
Refer. It. Okay. So that will move to committee of the whole. Item number C2, the Friday Harbor Resort Association proposed amendments. Councillor Payne. Refer to committee.
I'd like to pull that.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'd like to pull that, please.
Got that. Thank you. C3, the Emergency Measures Bylaw Amendments. Councillor Fowler. You wanted to, did you want to refer that, or you just had a comment, Councillor Fowler? You're on mute.
Apologies. Just when it comes up, a point of clarification, if possible, just looking to get some information.
Certainly, go ahead.
In the report under section 1.7, the delegated authority under this current motion goes to the CAO. My question is, when it comes to these sort of scenarios, is this as we had with COVID with the emergency control group that unifies under these scenarios and it's under his leadership, or is this over all things? Just
So my understanding is that it would be the emergency measures bylaw amendment. So the delegated authority would be to the CAO or his designate to make changes to the emergency measures bylaw amendment. Okay. So just to that bylaw.
Okay, that's all I was looking for clarification on. Thank you.
Thank you. And fun fact, tomorrow it'll be exactly 6 months to the day that we declared our local state of emergency. All right, so next item, C4, the user fees and charges update. Refer to committee, I'm assuming. John, Councillor Say.
Let's refer, please.
C5, the face covering in indoor spaces amendment. C6, the designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act for the Lucas store in Churchill. C7, the Lakeshore Water Pollution Control Plan Expansion Financing Agreement. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
I'd like to pull it.
C8, the Recreation Facility Banner Policy. Thank you. I just wanted to thank Ms. Botham and her team. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but for the proud parents of all of the teams, and Innisfil's had some good success lately, I think it's important to have a policy that's going to treat everybody equally. Staff reports for information. We had 2. Did anyone want to pull either of those? There was the Town Square project update and the Innisfil Beach Park Master Plan Vision Implementation Plan. Councillor Orsatti?
Yes, pulling item D2.
Thank you. And I saw your hand, Councillor Fowler. Did you have anything?
Yeah, I'm going to pull D1, please.
Okay. And bylaws. We have 2. A bylaw to appoint Acting Deputy Fire Chief Brent Black. Congratulations to him. And also an appointment to our building inspection team. Seeing none. There's no items for correspondence of action. G1, correspondence for information. I just wanted to speak quickly to G1, and that was the host municipalities on September the 10th met. Host municipalities being all those municipalities that host a casino. And there was some frustration from some of the larger groups. I'm thinking in particular Niagara Falls, Mayor Diodati and Mayor Dilkins from Windsor, who had a hard time understanding why a building designed to hold 4,000 or 5,000 people, and a building like Innisfil that's much smaller, we're both given the same maximum numbers. So the letter speaks for itself, but that has gone to the province and been acknowledged. And so that's not on behalf of Innisfil, but on behalf of all of the host municipalities, and signed by myself and as co-chair and Mayor Gordon Krantz from the town of Milton. And G2 is the correspondence that we received earlier today. Anybody want to pull? Nope, seeing none. So now the consent list recommendation. And we'll check and make sure that we don't miss any of those items that are going to be brought forward. Just waiting for the clerk's office to put it up on the screen. All right, let's just have a quick look and make sure we've got everything. That matches with my list. All right, so could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Waters, all those in favor? That's carried. And a motion to resolve into committee of the whole, so for more fulsome debate. And that is moved by Councillor Ices and seconded by Councillor Fowler. All those in favor? That is carried. So our first item is item C1, and that was pulled by Councillor Donna Orsatti. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you. Yes, I do. Councillor Carolyn Payne.
And go ahead. I see that the fire chief is ready and waiting.
Perfect. On this item, as we're using modernization grant money, and I think we're all in agreement with trying to look at ways to save money, and the partnership we've had with the town of Bradford before. But in reading the report, there was a couple of questions that I have and thoughts. One is the first one is the consulting firm, the consultant that's referred to hiring in this report. Is this a firm with a background in fire services? That's my first question. Do you want me to answer them individually or throw them all at you, Chief?
Through your worship to Councillor Sawyer, whatever's best for you. I can answer that first question if you like, and then we can move on to the second if that works with you.
Perfect.
So yes, so definitely the person or the consulting firm that we do retain to do this review will definitely have fire operational experience. Typically, for reviews that have been done like this in the past, the companies that generally are successful in the tender process are companies that do things like master fire plans or fire master plans. So those are there's not very many consultants out there that do it, but the ones that have done it in the past have been firms that are usually those firms are made up of retired fire chiefs. They also have financial analysts and of sorts. So we don't know who that's going to be yet because we haven't put the tender out, but that's certainly one of our requirements is they do have a strong fire background.
Thank you. And the second question is I guess the sort of, if we're using that, and this consulting firm, would they look at a feasibility assessment of the current services that we have? So in other words, looking at our efficiency and our staffing. I've just made my notes down here so that I don't forget what I want to ask. So, and the reason I'm asking that is just wondering, as we're looking at you know, the future, looking at our budgets, looking at the Parks Master Plan, vision, the Alcona Station. Since we're already going to be using a consultant, I know this is to look at the town of Bradford, but in order to look at how we could have shared services, would this consulting firm take into consideration assessing our current staffing and efficiency to determine whether we could do the shared services? And therefore, then would we be able to use that information in the future in determining how efficient we are currently running?
Chief?
Through your worship to Councillor Sadi, that would be the intent. Now, when I say that, they will be, this consultant, I can see them looking at the efficiencies and effectiveness of both models as they are currently running separately as two separate services, and then how that could be improved potentially by going together. Having said that, I don't believe this review will be a full fire master plan for both departments. That would be a separate, I think, a separate tender or a separate process. I believe that because the consultant that does come in will have a lot of fire experience and background, they will be able to advise us somewhat on, you know, you're really doing this properly. Is there a better way of doing it? I think we'll be able to get that type of information, but a full in-depth review of the entire Innisfil Fire and Rescue Service and the Bradford Emergency Services, I don't think that will be part of the review, because those are reviews that are generally quite expensive, take a lot of in-depth analysis on an individual basis. So I think we'll be able to get some good information and some good advice from this consultant that comes in, but I don't think it will be in as depth as you might have seen before in fire master plans or in a master fire plan.
Okay, but at least
Mr. Rayner, did you want to add something?
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to comment on the earlier question about the consulting firm. So obviously we haven't retained anyone yet, as the chief noted, and the report notes we're going out for tender for it. But given the context of shared services discussions that are going on within the One Town, One Team, across to Bradford, West Gwillimbury, the South Simcoe municipalities, and the county, it's very possible that there may be more than one consultant retained, and there may be a team. Certainly somebody's going to have some fire service experience for sure, but I just didn't want to leave council with the expectation that the master consultant may be a fire specialist. That has not been determined at this time. It's very possible that this work will dovetail into the broader shared services discussions that are going on with Bradford already. As you know, we provide water, and there's a number of other services we're exploring with them. So I just wanted to make sure we manage those expectations. And I think to support the chief's comment about the difference between a shared service review, a feasibility study, and a service level review, you know, the expectation is that this consultant will focus their energy on what efficiencies could be had from synergies and shared services, as opposed to whether or not the particular service is meeting a service level standard that council wants to review. That's not really the scope of this exercise.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Councillor Sadi?
Yeah, so just follow up to that, Mr. Rayner, and that, so just, so it may not be a consultant with fire experience, and I understand the review is between shared services of Bradford and Innisfil. I just feel that if you're going to look at our shared services, we want to ensure that we don't have consequential impacts to our own services and staffing and services to our community, because we're sharing a service with another community.
So sorry, Councillor, if I misspoke. There absolutely will be an expert retained on fire services. What I meant to say was they're expert. There may be a master consultant retained that specializes in shared services, and that I can see my internet connection is unstable, so hopefully you're hearing me okay. Just pause to see that it's working again. Great. So there may be a series of consultants that are retained as part of that overarching package. So certainly someone who has some shared service experience will be at the table, absolutely. And the consequences of service levels is very much a part of this discussion. And so that's why it's a feasibility study, and both councils will be engaged before there's a decision to move forward in any event.
Okay. Just trying to get the biggest bang out of our buck.
How old is our fire master plan? We're still working through recommendations on it, are we not?
To your worship, the current master fire plan actually was from 2013. We've done some further reviews since then, but the actual latest master fire plan was 2013.
Thank you. Any other questions for the chief? I have a couple, if I could, Chief. First of all, under the, it talks about looking at other municipalities as well. So if a neighboring municipality were interested, would they share part of the cost of phase 2?
To your worship and all of council, yes, that would be the intention. Should council decide to move forward with this, or both councils decide to move forward with this, I would be reaching out to neighboring municipalities to see if anybody is interested in taking part in this review. I think there will be some interest, but again, I haven't, because you guys haven't given me the heads up to the authority to do that, kind of have that conversation. That's when we would reach out, and it would be my intention that it would be shared amongst however many municipalities are involved.
Thank you. And I wondered if there'd be some latitude. It talks about the status quo or full consolidation. And I wondered about it being, could there not be kind of a hybrid in there as well? Like maybe sharing admin or sharing some equipment, or is it one or the other? Is it status quo or full consolidation?
To your worship and all of council, I think that would be open in the scope of when we do this tender out to the consultants, that they would look at all options and provide us information and recommendations from that. I'm sure there are more options than one or the other. I think there is probably a blend that could work, and that council would have a chance to look at once this recommendation comes forward or the observations come forward from the consultants.
Thank you. My one last comment, similar to Councillor Sadie, is obviously somebody with fire experience, but I would also be very interested that it be somebody who has interest with, experience with composite forces, and not, you know, a large city where it's all full time.
I agree, your worship. It needs to be somebody that understands the way we do business, the way municipalities of our size and makeup do business, and how they can improve. But that would be my expectation as well.
That would be wonderful, because we all know how much we value our volunteers, and so we want to make sure that whomever we have also understands how valuable they are. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Seeing none, we have a mover and a seconder, so we'll call the vote on this staff report, or this recommendation. All those in favor? Is there any contrary? That is, were you voting in favor, Councillor Payne? I think so, yeah, okay. My internet is a little bit slow tonight too, so people are jumping a little bit, so I apologize. So that is carried, and is carried unanimously. Thank you, Chief. Next is item C2, and that was Councillor Payne. Councillor Payne, did you have a seconder, or did you have an amended motion, or?
I don't have a seconder as yet, but I just want to make a comment on this.
Okay, are you prepared to move it though, as it stands?
Yes.
As it's written? You are?
Yes.
Okay, so Councillor Payne is
Yes.
moving, and I saw Councillor Fowler was seconding it.
Okay, so can I?
The floor is yours.
Okay. After reading all the information on this, I mean, there is no impact on services provided by Empower, including sanitary and water infrastructure and demands. Simcoe County has given their approval, as it will not impact their growth management, as the school boards are unable to accommodate an influx of new students in the available schools. It should be advertised with Friday Harbour that it is more like well, it's family oriented or an adult living community, but they should know that there are no schools available at this time. Lake Simcoe has no concerns on the watershed management or natural heritage and hazard policies of the provincial policy statement and Lake Simcoe protection plan. And as for Friday Harbour residents, they do pay full property taxes. They should be entitled to live in their residence for 365 days of the year if they do so wish. My own opinion is it will not see any major change in the population of Friday Harbour, as they may just want to use it as their vacation property that is available whenever they want to use it or rent it out. The 300-day occupancy, 300 days, 365 consecutive day, 185, it won't make any difference if it's 365 days. Friday Harbour will continue to be a resort experience, whether you live there or you don't. It's a place where people in Innisfil can just go for the afternoon, enjoy the experience of a resort, and have a good time and relax and enjoy the beauty of Lake Simcoe. So I just want to say that I am in total favor of the 365 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you. I'm going to have a question for Mary Nordstrom. Just one of the letters that we received was in concern that it has that the province, there's no correspondence from the province that they approve the application. And I just wonder if you could speak on that. If it was approved by council and went to the county and approved by the county, is there any possibility that the province would say no, or what would happen next? That's my first question, and if I can come back after that.
Ms. Nordstrom?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Orsatti. Certainly the province was circulated on the application that came in, and the county has the delegated authority to approve a local official plan amendment, and the county would liaise with the province on applications of this nature. And the county has advised that the proposed applications would not impact the growth management studies as they haven't in the past, and they wouldn't in the future. And so based on what decision is made tonight, then ultimately the county would be the approval authority on the official plan application. And should there be any shift at that level, which we don't anticipate happening, given the checks and balances that have put in place in this official plan amendment document before you this evening, then that would happen at that county level.
Councillor Orsatti, you had a follow-up?
Not a follow-up, just a statement, but if others, do you want me to make that?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Just that in reading the report, and all of us got the binder with the I think it was 600 pages in it. I did read every single letter from the residents that were in there. And although some were photocopied, there were some very personal letters describing the situation. One of a resident who owns it, they enjoy it as a seasonal resort. They go to Florida every winter. However, they were not able to go this year because of COVID. And what happened was they had to vacate the unit that they purchased, that they own, and find some place to rent for the duration, because they couldn't stay in their own unit. What's interesting is the units are occupied 365 days a year. So a purchaser owns it, they can't live in it, but they can rent it out, so it's still occupied. So the argument of not having people there, it just balances out for me. And for that reason, I like the management now offering a professionally managed rental program. I think that will reduce the concerns as they're working through it on the Airbnb, based on the staff report with requiring a letter to go to all purchasers about the schools, and that if they did have children, and I would think it would be very few, that they must be aware that there is, if their children need education, it may not happen in Innisfil, and they will have to go outside the area to provide that for their children. It would be up to them to arrange and look after that. For those reasons, I'm in full support of the units being owned and occupied by the purchasers for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you. I have to concur with Councillor Sadi and Councillor Payne. This would benefit the town of Innisfil in the greatest way, that a lot of these residents who are going to be living here possibly full time, they can get more involved in our community and support our community more. So I think it's a step in the right direction. Times have changed. I doubt a lot of these people will be able to go to Florida or elsewhere this winter. So again, they're going to have to find accommodation somewhere else or stay at Friday Harbour. So I feel that this particular concern needs to move forward. And my concern with the educational aspect, I think council, we all received a letter this afternoon, late in the afternoon, around 3 o'clock, with some concerns from the school boards. And at 5:19, Mary sent out an email to all of council about the concerns of the school boards and how we'll handle them in the future. And so I do concur that we need to move forward and approve this. And one other question I would like Friday Harbour to do is maybe pat themselves on the back a little bit with the being recognized as one of the greenest marinas in the world. I don't think a lot of residents realize how the importance of that. And when I hear people saying that it's impacted Lake Simcoe, I think they need to read up just a little bit more and know that that's not exactly true. Thank you.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the question I had was similar to Councillor Orsatti's in terms of the letter that we had received this afternoon concerning the population, and so I think that question has been answered to me. But I do have just a comment that this seems to be strictly an opportunity for investment to happen in Friday Harbour. I think investment has stalled, and that they need to tap into those people who have to go to the bank in order to get mortgages, in order to buy and sell these places. So I want Friday Harbour to be successful, because I think it is a unique location in Innisfil. I was on the fence about it, but I think it all comes down. I want them to be successful. So my major concern is the conflicts I think they may run into around full-time residents and those people, those rentals. And the other piece is the conflict between the hotel and those rental facilities, because most hotel places do not want to have Airbnbs in competition with them. So it'd be interesting to see how they're going to handle this. And I hope the hotel still goes through, just from a conferencing point of view in the future when we get past COVID. I think would be a nice added benefit to the unit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too favor this motion. I want to go ahead with it. My biggest concern was that it would have an effect on the growth in the rest of Innisfil, but we've been assured that it hasn't, and that it will stay a resort area. So I think if you put everything together, what Councillor Payne, Councillor Sadi, and Councillor Waters just said, and the Deputy Mayor, there's nothing to be afraid of. We will continue growing as we plant, and there's no worry that this is going to be counted into our population. It will stay a resort area, and that should put the minds of the other developers at ease. It certainly does put mine at ease, and I support this wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
Before I support this or throw any weight behind it, I need there's some few things that I was going through in the plan amendment, and it doesn't. It sends a bit of conflicting message to me. We've been fighting the Airbnb situation all over Big Bay Point for a while now. There have been people that have been saying the damage they cause and the issues that arise. So we're trying to find a way to limit it. But in the same thing, in the same mindset, here we have in this document under 2.23 8.81 section F, the proponent of the development may include provisions in registered condominiums, declarations indicating that resort residential units may be leased on a seasonal, short-term, or daily basis and placed within more than one rental programs. Then on top of that, if you look down at 2.31, 8.13.2, the holding provision for the resort residential units in phase 3 shall not be lifted until the town has received confirmation that one or more rental programs have been established, providing the owners of the resort residential units the opportunity to rent out their units on a seasonal, short-term, or daily basis. So on one breath, we're saying we don't want Airbnbs, but in the documentation buried in it, we have people that can rent out their units for a day or short-term rental, which we have learned causes problems. Even the gentleman who did the delegation earlier today, Jack, said it, that he's looking to limit the amount of Airbnbs in the area. So who oversees these rental programs? Is it now, what is there a record of troublemakers, or a person who comes in and causes damage, or breaks the law? What is the consequence for such actions when we can't control it outside of Friday Harbour? Why are we allowing it within? If you can reassure me that that's not going to be a problem, or that there's measures in place and control that we can protect the people that have the units there and are actually being respectful to the area, then I'll throw my weight behind it.
Ms. Nordstrom?
Yes, thank you to you, Mayor, to Councillor Fowler's inquiry. An important part of when we were looking at the request to remove the occupancy restrictions is that ensuring that the resort function of Friday Harbour that has been well established with the amenities that have been put in place continues. And so with the work of the peer reviewers and the submissions that came in from Friday Harbour, we looked at certainly determining that it is in fact a resort, but secondly, with the amount of resort commercial and retail amenities that are present on site at Friday Harbour, was there a need for a more than currently resort ownership portfolio? There needs to be a short-term rental trending within the resort to support those amenities and that resort commercial. And it was determined that yes, the spending habits of short-term visitors, short-term stay at a resort like this does support the amount of resort retail, commercial, and amenities that exist at Friday Harbour, and it will ensure its continued success. So currently, at any given time, through an informal Airbnb, Kijiji, or what have you, there are a number of units available for short-term rental at Big Bay Point or at Friday Harbour currently. And through the negotiations and discussions with Friday Harbour through this application, they've committed to establishing a resort owned and operated or third party owned and operated, be it a hotel group, to run a formalized rental program that supports the resort function of Friday Harbour and the amenities and resort commercial and retail that exist there today, and ensure that it's curated in the same way that Friday Harbour offers other amenities and ensures that resort function of the community. So the commitment by Friday Harbour to have that resort-owned rental program in place by next year will be looking at all of those considerations in terms of security, which they have on-site security, and the other measures that you're raising that will be considered and explored as they develop this formalized rental program to support the resort function of Friday Harbour.
Follow up, if I may.
I just want to give Mr. Kane an opportunity if he had anything to add.
Thank you, Worship, and through to Councillor Fowler. The other part of this too, the town-wide Airbnb investigations and responses and research is still going on in collectively with our county partners as well. So that process is still ongoing. So there's been no decisions made on how to respond to short-term rentals on a town-wide basis, and certainly we'll be looking at all those very elements across the town, including Friday Harbour.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. A follow-up, Councillor Fowler?
Yes. So in essence, these companies, these rental, the overseers, they are the ones who answer to Friday Harbor. Am I correct in that understanding? If something goes wrong, Friday Harbor is the one that oversees the companies that arrange these Airbnbs and such. Am I correct in that understanding?
Can I help? I'm going to try to help it by giving you an example, counselor. So when you go to Blue Mountain Resort and you go to the check-in desk and you reserved a room there and you're staying for one night or a week or whatever, all of those units in Blue Mountain Resort are owned by somebody. Somebody purchased them and they have the opportunity. I have a friend who has two. One of them is in the rental pool. And one of them is just for their own purpose. They could live there. There's nothing saying they could not live in their unit at Blue Mountain 365 days of the year at Georgian Manor with, a Starbucks downstairs, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen. It's all good. So those units are owned by somebody, and then they have the option of, what they don't have the option of is renting them out other than the rental pool. They're either in the rental pool or they're not. And if they get caught trying to rent them out on Airbnb, then they get into a bunch of trouble. So, but anyway, I just want to give you that as a sense of what a professional rental operation might look like. I hope that helped.
So there's checks and balances in place. That's what I'm looking to establish. Okay, thank you.
Anybody want to add to that? Councillor Payne.
I just have a question, and I'm not sure if it's for Cheryl or it's for Mary. Does Friday Harbor have a security outfit that is there constantly, or do they just go by the Simcoe County Police? Is there security there at all times? That's my question is. Is there security at all times at Friday Harbor?
Mr. Vickers?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Payne. Friday Harbor does have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week security, and bylaw works with them, and South Simcoe Police work with them. So that's an ongoing relationship that we do have with Friday Harbor.
Okay, other questions, comments? Councillor Waters.
Off of what Councillor Fowler was talking about in terms of Airbnbs versus their own formal rental system, at Blue Mountain, I think that's the way the hotel and grounds were designed, was to have that. I'm kind of curious, will they be able to force existing owners to agree to that formal agreement of having only one place where those can be rented from?
Mr. Kane, Ms. Nordstrom.
Through you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Tim, I didn't see you there. Yeah, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Waters. Right now, what the rental program looks like hasn't been ironed out. It is a requirement that be done prior to the end of next year. Hopefully sooner, but certainly would be, it wouldn't be requiring every unit owner to provide a unit into this formalized rental program, but that would be where those rental programs would be established, would be in cooperation with those condo corps and the Resort Association.
Okay, thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through Your Worship, to Mary. You say to the end of next year. Like, I'm aware of what Airbnbs have done to the area and what's been happening at Friday Harbor this summer. If a person does not register with this rental board and is caught renting their unit out to Airbnb, Kijiji, whatever it is they're doing, can we ensure that the fines at Friday Harbor will set will be enough to discourage them for not joining this rental board?
I think those details are yet to be worked out.
Yeah, but I would like to see it before next summer, because this year they did have an impact on our fire and police services. And there was some out of control parties that did happen there. Fire actually started out there. So I would like to see something in this a little bit more aggressive in the fact that they straighten out this resort rental thing before next summer. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I just had, I had a couple, one of which was an argument that, that struck a chord with me in the public meeting, and that was in regards to, I think it was Mrs. D'Alessandro, talked about the fact that an owner can't live there 365 days a year, but a renter can. So, and I can tell you anecdotally, there is already people renting there that have kids that those kids are in the school system in Simcoe County. They just drive them there. So I like the idea of having that in the purchase agreement. I like the idea of having the formalized rental. I think that the Airbnb thing will sort itself out, as it is an issue in all municipalities in Ontario, not just ours. And I think that if I, as a condominium owner, had the ability to rent out my unit respectfully, knowing that it was going to be taken care of and looked after, versus, you know, what can happen with Airbnb. And I know that the town, regardless of whether it's Friday Harbour, we do have to deal with these issues. I know that I am, up until COVID, I wasn't home 300 days a year. So like it's not preventing people from it being their principal residence, because most people, I think, aren't in their principal residence more than 300 days a year. And yeah, that was, oh, and then I just wanted to try to answer Ms. Varga's questions. So would it have gone through? I think if there was a way without the 365-day rule, all council was looking for was to make sure that it was going to develop as a resort. That it wasn't going to be, yeah, we're going to build this lovely golf course. Yeah, we're going to build this lovely marina, and all they built was units. So I think it was our way of, at the time when there's nothing, there wasn't a shovel in the ground, of providing that assurance. The other, I think for sure that the Conservation Authority would have still not had an issue with approving it, because again, those units are designed to be used 365 days a year, not just by a single person. And I can't remember what the other one was, the peer review question. So that is a very common thing to do. And yes, we insist that the peer review is paid for by the developer, but we choose who is going to do the peer review, and they answer to us. The only thing that the proponent has to do with is they pay the bill, because we certainly don't want taxpayers paying to peer review every application that comes to the town. It would cost too much money. So, but the peer reviewers that are double checking the work that the proponents give us is, they are working for us, and they know that. And I think that's all I had. So if anybody else has any final comments before we call for a vote. Seeing none. All those in favor of the recommendation? That is carried unanimously. Next item was item C4, and that was the user fees and charges update, and that was Councillor Sadi. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Sadi?
Yes, I'm looking at Councillor Ken Fowler. Just going over these user fees, and pardon me, I'm going to have to refer to my larger screen. Item 5.1, which is summer ice time. There was no existing fee showing. However, the proposed change is that there would be a $200 resident fee and a $200 non-resident fee. And I question why non-residents would get the same fee as residents. Should they not be paying more? So that's one of the first items I want to cover.
Ms. Botham?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Asadi. I apologize if my mic was giving me some trouble today, so I hope I'll get through okay. Please let me know if you don't hear me. There was, if you look at 5.1D, Councillor Asadi, there was summer ice rates prior to, and they have all, excuse me, they have always been set as resident and non-resident being the same amount for the summer. Our summer utilization is lower, and we consistently keep it for a straight rate instead of a resident and non-resident.
Yes, you know, I just feel that non-residents should pay something more, even if it's a small token. Residents should have should always have a lower fee than non-residents. And but I'll look to council for that one. Then should I be going to, does anybody else have any comments on that 5.1 for resident, non-resident fees before I move on to item 5.10? No?
So just go ahead with your list, and then other people put up their hands, I'll recognize them.
Thank you very much. Okay, 5.10, sorry, just pardon me, is, okay, and I just wanted to make a comment in this one because when I looked at it, was skating party. The $250, $300 for non-residents, and that was 50 minutes ice time, 20 minutes of a room for 50 minutes ice time, and an hour room time for 20, I think it was 20 guests. But when I started looking at party rentals that parents pay for these, for kids, for parties and all these different things, they're paying like $400 for a couple hours, and used to be Chuck E. Cheese, and now it's, you know, all these party places. So I felt that this, you know, at first I thought it was too high, but I just wanted to make a comment that I thought it was par on after checking other services and what parents are willing to pay for parties. Going to 8.5Z, Z for zebra.
That's building permit deposit?
Yes, $5,000. We have no deposit now. And this is a building deposit fee that we don't charge now. Now, I did check with the deputy treasurer, and we have our building official, Mr. Vickers, here. And this, I don't know whether you want to speak on this, Mr. Vickers, or you just want me to carry on. You want to carry on? Okay. Then what it was is when I questioned this, this item is to be removed. It was a concept item only, so it will be removed from the report. Is that correct, Mr. Vickers?
Mr. Vickers? Yeah, he's nodding yes.
Thank you. And then 8.9, lot grading deposit. Lot grading deposit shows a new charge. There was no charge before, and it's $1,000. And that is for a garage, a pool, a deck, or an accessory structure. So that could be a shed. And and I know from my Ward 3 that there is an increase in residents doing lot grading that impacts swales, and it takes a lot of staff time. But I feel that the $1,000 is if somebody came to the town and on top of their, permit fee to put in a deck, I'm going to say $350. Now they have to also pay $1,000 deposit. I think that paying $1,000 is going to make more residents become weekend warriors and not file for a permit. They're just going to build the structure and hope nobody catches them. I think it's too high. I feel that there should be, even though it's refundable, I just think that for a senior couple, if they're having a shed replaced, they may not be able to afford to come up with $1,000 because maybe they're putting the shed or the deck on their credit card or their whatever, Rona plan or whatever they have. And I agree with the fee. I just think the fee is too high. And I don't know whether council would be agreeable to looking at either a $250 to $500 fee, something that would be more acceptable, and that even because people will get it refunded, they just have to be able to come up with that money right away. And there's not a lot in families that can do that. And that would reduce illegal builds in my view.
Let's let Mr. Vickers respond to that, where the $1,000 came from.
Right. So we currently have a $5,000 deposit on new homes, which is lot grading. And so the $1,000, the concept was that we have some sheds and large structures that go on properties where they're in close proximity to the property line. And we would have the ability to take a deposit and ensure that the lot grading problems that sometimes occur out of these situations, we would have a financial incentive on the applicant's side for them to resolve their issues, because we do spend a certain amount of time trying to resolve these issues. So Councillor Asadi and I did speak this afternoon, and I thought her suggestion was actually very appropriate, and I'd be, I think a lower amount may well be worth council's consideration. But I would like, I'd be in favor of seeing the deposit in place just as that financial incentive to ensure we don't get into a bunch of staff time resolving issues which applicants have no interest in resolving, or they have no financial interest in resolving. So we see it as an incentive to a problem. We don't see that we would apply it all the time. Commonly decks wouldn't warrant us collecting a deposit, but sometimes there's big sheds in the back close to the property line. So that's where we would see us asking an applicant.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up, or did you want me to go around the floor now, Councillor Asadi?
You can go around the floor. I still have others, but I'll let you go around the floor on this one.
Councillor Waters? You're on mute, Councillor.
I understand where Councillor Asadi is coming from in terms of having people abide by it, but I've had a few issues in my ward where people have built large structures, have filled in their swales, and have just basically thumbed their nose up at bylaw, and quite honestly, I can't remember if not I don't even think they got a permit to begin with. So I sometimes you have to lead with a big stick, and they're going to get that money back. But there are some people out there who just don't want to abide by anything. And like I said, I've had two residents with large structures in the backyard, and both times they filled in the swales, and the neighbors were dramatically impacted by that. So I just I can go along with Councillor Rosati's suggestion, but there are people out there who will, if it's not a big stick, we don't have a big stick, we won't get them to comply at all.
Councillor Van Berkel. You're on mute too, Councillor.
Sorry. I agree with what Councilor Waters just said, and I believe, you know, one of the biggest complaints in the building department is lot grading. And if it's like a $250 fine half the time, you know, rather than pay the $250 or try and get it back, they let it go because it's too big of a hassle to fix it or do whatever. And you know, I've been in the building business a long time, and I've seen it over and over and over again where, you know, the lot grading, that's the final part of your building. And if there isn't something to get back that's worthwhile getting back, they're just going to walk away from it. They fill swales and do whatever. So I'm totally in favor of $1,000. I'd make it more if it was my way, but $1,000, I'm fine with that. You're going to get the money back if you do your job properly. If you don't do your job, you know, we're going to hang on to it until it is done. And I agree with Councillor Waters. We need a big stick to swing at these guys. So I have no problem with $1,000.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you. And I think the difference is this is existing lots where homes are, so it's not being, you know, brand new built. And I think we've all experienced, or several of us anyway, lot grading issues, and I'm not denying that. And I certainly think that needs to be a fee. I'm just thinking of the seniors, those of family that are trying to build something legally, do it the right way, but $1,000 is a lot to swallow. And they may say, I can't afford the $1,000. I'm just going to build it and hope nobody catches me. So I just wondered, you know, if it could be less, 500 or.
Mr. Vickers?
The building department will use discretion in whether or not we collect the fee, as I said. So what we'd like to do is, on an operational level, we'll go out and assess whether there is the potential for there to be a lot grading issue if things aren't done properly. I mean, if somebody has a 5-acre lot or, you know, a large property and what they're doing is nowhere near the property line, so it's hard to imagine that there would be any issues, then it wouldn't be appropriate to ask for the lot grading deposit, but we would have that tool available to us in the fee schedule. So that's how I see it.
Thank you. Councillor Van Berkel.
And I agree. And I think Mr. Vickers by now knows his players who, you know, people that will clean up and people that won't clean up. And if he uses the discretion, it's a great tool. I think he should have that tool in his toolbox and that discretion.
Okay, well, Councillor Orsatti's musing about whether or not she's going to put forward an amended recommendation. Is there anyone else that had any questions on the fees and charges bylaw? I've got two I wanted to bring forward. So one of them was the special events fee, and I think I read that it was going to come forward with a policy that I don't remember seeing the policy. Is that still to come, Ms. Botham?
Yes, so just for clarity, Your Worship, the special event guide was developed in 2013. Staff are currently reviewing it, and we're hoping to have something to council this year, but due to COVID, it probably will be Q1 next year before you do see it.
So until we've, so give me an example of what kind of a special event might have to pay the fee. My concern is things like the Santa Claus parade. You know, that's, I know that special events are draining on staff time. I totally get that. But at the same time, these people are out of the goodness of their heart volunteering. It's a non-for-profit organization versus a special event, which is like a for-profit making function. And I just wondered what the discretion was going to be around that.
Yeah, so that fee actually was outlined in the guidelines. So it has been in place since the guidelines were adopted in 2013. It actually is just in verbiage within the guidelines, but it has been charged based on discretion by staff. The reason we were putting it into the fees and charges is that it is more relevant, and we were having profit organizations come and fill out their application. Staff time was spent, and then they would decide that they didn't want to do the event, or there'd be other stipulations that they would require, and there'd be a lot of staff time adopted that never got utilized. So we were hoping to go ahead and put that in the fees and charges now, although it was already being charged in some circumstances in the past.
Thank you for that clarification. Can I ask you also, while your screen is on, about pavilion rentals? Other places we have residential and non-residential fees. Pavilion rentals are the same regardless of resident or non. And just wondered if that has ever been a consideration.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find my sheet, Your Worship. Pavilion rentals should be resident and non-resident, unless they have got lost through the transition. Okay,
I'll leave that with you just as a thought, and I could have read it wrong. Absolutely.
Yeah, so pavilion rentals are at 5.2B, and they are at 125 for resident, 150 for non-resident.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And then my final comment was regards to heritage permit fees. So I'm not sure, Mr. Kane, if that would be you or Ms. Nordstrom.
I'll defer to Ms. Nordstrom and provide backup if required.
So my concern is with the Heritage Conservation District, and I remember there being a fairly compelling promise at the time that the heritage permit fee and the building would be included in the building permit fee, and there would be no extra cost.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for the question. We've put that in there as a place saver of sorts in the review of the Heritage Conservation District Plan, that there is a need to recoup that, but it wouldn't be done in advance of revising that Heritage Conservation District Plan. As well as in looking at that Heritage Conservation District Plan, we're going to be looking at delegating the Class 1 reports to staff, which changes the staff resources and time put into commenting and reporting on the heritage applications. So we certainly wouldn't be implementing that charge, that user fee, without taking into consideration that delegated authority and changes to that Heritage Conservation District Plan.
Thank you. Okay, look forward to that. Councillor Asadi, we're back to you. Did you have amendments?
Nope. I still have some other ones to go through.
Okay, but no amendments to yet? Okay.
I do for that one. Do you want me to put an amendment forward on the 8.9 now?
Well, if you want to go through all of them, and then perhaps I can capture all the amendments together.
Thank you. The next one I wanted to ask a question on is under 9 for the planning. And I just want to just get a better understanding of the accelerated services, quicker enhanced applications where you're going to pay more, or I'm going to call it a VIP service. Those that are not on the accelerated service and just doing a regular one, is there a chance? I'm worrying that they're going to have a delayed and it's going to take longer for them to get their planning documents if they're not paying the accelerated. Maybe you could shed some light on that one.
Ms. Nordstrom?
It's a new service. Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Asadi, for that question and the thorough review of the user fees bylaw. So we are looking both from a user fee, customer service experience standpoint, as well as what we heard from the council workshop in terms of reducing the red tape and getting really important projects in the ground faster. And so this is a means of ensuring that those important projects that deliver some significant community benefits, be it employment or sustainability, exceed sustainability, targets that if they choose to do so, they're put on an accelerated track, but it is dependent on staff availability, which is noted there in the user fees. And it would not be at the cost or detriment of our other streams. We are looking, we've been working at improving our site plan process across all streams. And this would be an added value stream that we're adding to our improvements to our overall site plan process. If that answers your question.
Thank you. It does answer my question. And the final one I had was on fleet. And I'm just going to that one now, which is 12.1. And corporate retail D. Item 12.1C, which is sublet charge. Just a correction there. I did get clarification from Mr. Inwood. It shows the existing fee or proposed fee of $150 to $225. It looks like 1,000. It is, there will be corrected to say $150 to $225. So I did ask the stupid question because, you know, is there a possibility with, I can take my car to a service center and I get hit with a $4,000 charge. So I have no idea when it comes to large corporate vehicles. So I just want to note that that one will be corrected.
Well, it's the decimal points in the right place.
That's right.
But I see what you see, there's an extra zero.
When you see that quickly, just so that if anybody in the public was looking at it, that they're not going to question, you know, what we're doing. Just I just wanted to share that. So the only amendment that I would like to make as a motion for amendment is on 8.9 lot grading deposit fee. And I apologize to clerk services that I didn't give them a heads up. But this is on, currently the proposed is, hang on, let me just go to that, because it's currently, it's not a building permit deposit, it's lot grading deposit, 8.9 and not 8.5Z. Oh yes, so that's in there too. Yes, okay, from $1,000 to $500.
Do you have a seconder for that amendment?
Come on, somebody raise. I have Councillor Ken Fowler.
Okay, Councillor Fowler. And so any further discussion on this item before we call the vote? All those in favor of the amendment proposed? All those in favor. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's lost.
Okay.
Any other amendments?
Nope, that's it. Just tried to help the public.
Thank you. And then the only other comment I would have is on 5.1 with that ice time, Councillor. I think getting some money from somebody rather than having it sit empty is definitely going to be a benefit to the residents. Trying to fill up that ice time that's not very popular. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple of questions concerning 2 points that Councillor Rosati brought up. First of all, is under the permit fees, I think it was 8.5. There seems to be a lot of cents involved in this. I said, why aren't we rounding up or rounding down those numbers? There's 91 cents, 4 cents. Why are we not rounding up and down? And the second question I have has to do with accelerated, but I'll let the first question be answered first of all.
That would probably be one for Ms. Webb.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Waters. Certainly that's something that we can consider. I think when you look at the fees, they're fairly small. So if they're applying inflationary factors to them, you know, it becomes maybe a bit more difficult to round those to whole numbers. And so I think that's what you're seeing happening in this schedule. I think if you look at a lot of the other fees in the bylaw, you'll see that we are rounding them to, you know, whole dollars, or, you know, in some cases maybe 50 cents. But that's what's happening on this schedule. Just that they're smaller dollars in some cases. But I do see, as I'm looking down, I do see some bigger numbers that do have the cents in there. So certainly something that we can look at and endeavor to fix for future user fee bylaws.
Okay, that's excellent. My second question pertaining to the accelerated permit schedule, and will we be hiring new staff for that accelerated service? Because I don't want to see, you know, people who are single family builders, residents who are delayed getting their permits because our staff are being directed towards the accelerated service because we can make more money at it. So it would be nice. It seems to be a staffing resource issue. And so either you hire more staff to get the job done, or you end up creating a two-tier service system for those who can afford it and those who can't afford it. So my question is, are we hiring extra staff for that accelerated service so it doesn't impact the other service?
Mr. Kane?
Through your worship to Councillor Waters, you know, given the budgetary constraints that we are facing for numerous reasons, the idea is not to hire additional staff, and the idea is to utilize the staff that we have, you know, with the potential overtime funded by that additional fee, or there's always the option of external planning experts as well, you know, which we brought in other cases, as demonstrated tonight with the Friday Harbour application. So those would be the two options that we rely on without looking at the hiring of additional full-time staff.
Is there a baseline that we can have according to how much time it takes for staff to process permits, so that we know a year down the road after we've done this that we're not seeing an impact on that other stream?
Mr. Kane?
Through your worship to Councillor Waters, that's a very good question, and it's you know, I certainly agree with the concept. I guess the question is, how long is a piece of string, right? So each application is different. You know, as you know, there are standards and legislative timelines set out in the Planning Act. Quite often, you know, those are exceeded just because of the complex nature of applications and that two-way back and forth, you know, particularly through, you know, collective efforts to try and advance these applications for the benefit of all parties. So it's certainly something we can look at. We are looking at process improvements right now, and if we can build that monitoring into that, you know, both to measure that different stream of approvals that's being talked about now, and also to measure improvements in overall customer delivery, then that's certainly something that we will look at, and appreciate that comment.
Yeah. Thank you. I'd like to see that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the fees and charges, user fees and charges bylaw? Seeing none, we have oh, sorry, Mr. Rayner.
Sorry, Your Worship, members of council, just wanted to clarify. I think there was agreement to remove the 8.5 Z, the $5,000 building permit piece. So I know it was caught in the previous amendment, which failed, but perhaps, Your Worship, we should just clarify. I mean, certainly staff are willing to take council's direction on that, but just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page there. Thank you.
Thank you. Good catch. Yes. So was any council, so as we understood it, that was an error, or was something that was going to be considered and taken out. So can we have a mover and a seconder to make that amendment? Councillor Nicol, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Van Berkel. And we'll give staff just a moment to put that forward. And as we're coming up to the hour of 10, I'll ask the clerk's office if I forget what our hour of closure is now. Is it 10 or 10:30? Hi, Mr. Parkin.
Good evening. I do believe it's 10. And if council wishes to continue onwards, you'll need to pass a motion and specify how late you're willing to keep going.
Okay, we'll do that right after we do this. So we have the amended, and that was moved by, I think, Councillor Nicol and seconded by Councillor Van Berkel. All those in favor of the amendment? That is carried. And then we'll go back to the motion as amended. Mover and a seconder. I think we already have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Orsatti and Councillor Fowler. All those in favor? That is carried. How late do we want to work, people? We have 1, 2, 3 more items. Shall we stay to 11 just and try to get this done?
Finish.
Okay.
Let's see it through.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Van Berkel, Councillor Fowler, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, let's try to keep our comments as succinct as possible, and hopefully we can finish a little bit before then if possible. So this is items C7, and this was pulled by Deputy Mayor Davidson. Do you have a seconder, Deputy?
Councillor.
You have an amendment. Sorry, I should have asked.
No, I don't have an amendment at this point. Let me just ask for a question of clarification first from the CEO. In our last meeting, we discussed the availability of the developers who are putting 60% of the money up front, that they were able to see the proposal from In-Services and to have their say on what In-Services was doing. It's just that I was told that that would be in this agreement, and I don't know if I've missed it. I've gone over it for about the 4th time. I have not seen where the developer has an opportunity to look at this expansion and give their insight, or possibly where there may be errors have taken place. It's good to have another set of eyes other than just the town staff. And I think they may also look and see if we may have a discrepancy with cost. I'm worried about cost overage on here. So I was told one thing, but I don't see it in this report. So can I get clarification on that, please?
Mr. Rayner.
Thank you, through your worship, to the Deputy Mayor. No, it's a great question, Deputy Mayor. The developers group has actually retained a number of consultants to assist with the process, including the I&I works, as well as the design and commenting on the design. So In-Services has done yeoman's work in providing as much of the information that they can to that group for comment. We understand that the developers group would like more opportunity to engage in the design. The problem is that we're in a tendering process. So unfortunately, we can't provide the full design specifications because that would give a competitive advantage to those teams that may decide ultimately to bid on what will be the tender or the construction of the actual facility, which you can imagine with a $98 million projected price tag. There are a lot of eyes on the procurement process, and it's absolutely critical, like always, that we follow all of the appropriate procedures. So we appreciate that they wanted to provide more information and more, I guess, review of the design and the pre-design. But unfortunately, we have gone as far, well, I shouldn't say we, it's In-Services, but In-Services has gone as far as they're comfortable given the procurement constraint.
Would they have not, as a follow-up, Your Worship, would they have not signed a confidentiality agreement to seeing this document ahead of time? Because I know we've had to sign them, and I think the developers would possibly have to sign them, that this information that they're viewing would be confidential and could not be shared. I just feel that if I was putting out 60% of the cost of something, I really, really want to know where my money's going and making sure it's not going to come to a screw up halfway through where the cost will go up an additional 30%. I know Councilor Van Berkel has something to add to this in that concern of cost. So can you answer if there would be a confidential agreement drawn up with these developers who are contributing to it?
Yeah, it's a great question, Deputy Mayor. I'm not sure if a confidential agreement has been discussed specifically about sort of opening the design process. Of course, there was there was a fully qualified design company that was retained through a public procurement process to provide the design for the plant. So it's a good suggestion. I'm certainly happy to take that back to the in-services team and discuss it with them. Ultimately the challenge is that the developers are front-end financing. They're not paying. So just to be 100% clear, the development charges are what will pay, which means the homeowners are the ones that pay. And since in-services is ultimately responsible to those homeowners to make sure that they can deliver in this case, remove the wastewater, it is the in-services team's responsibility to make sure the design is completed appropriately and to the standards that are acceptable. So you can imagine in any discussion like this, there may be suggestions about processes that could be more cost efficient. But as we all know, in construction projects like this, you sometimes sacrifice quality if you're looking for cost efficiency. And so it's in-services responsibility because ultimately they have to operate the plants and they have to be responsible to the ministry and to the residents to make sure that the plant is operating effectively and efficiently. And so it's in-services decision about the design ultimately, and they are the ones who are taking that feedback from the developer group for sure, but they have to follow the procurement procedures and their own procedures to make sure that they're comfortable with that. It's not the developers that will ultimately pay for it, it's the residents and the development charges. Although we certainly, I should say, appreciate the front-end financing that the development community has stepped up. Just very pleased to report that 80% of the developers who have been participating in the process have already agreed, and it looks like the remaining, sorry, Lee, I know this was, you were just about to say this, so you can tell I'm excited because it's been a significant amount of energy on the developers' part and ours. Congratulations to the in-services team for sure, and the town team for negotiating what in other communities has become a very protracted, long drawn-out litigation process. In terms of front-end financing major infrastructure of this type. So sorry to digress, but that's part of the process for sure.
Just to final up, Your Worship. Okay, and in your comments there, we're very lucky to have the developers step up to the plate like this. And yes, we know it's the homeowner that pays. But again, if in-services is responsible to make sure it works, I would like not to see a same scenario that we faced this January when we had a huge rainstorm and many people had their basements flood back up on them. And then a lot of people pointed to a particular developer as being the cause. So I don't want to see this reoccur again. And I don't want to see a design flaw pop up where this occurs again. So that's why I have a concern that it's happened once and I don't like to see it happen again because it really puts a lot of burden on our residents. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Parkin.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to add to what Mr. Rayner was saying, in this agreement specifically, we also have a clause in the agreement that the developers group can make a request to meet with in-services to get regular updates as to how the construction is progressing as well. So throughout the construction, they should be getting regular updates because it is I believe a 3-year construction, so it's quite a long time. But they're certainly willing to get updates on a regular basis as to how that's going. And then again, very happy to have received at least written confirmation from most of the developers that they'll be they are intending to sign the agreement. And really want to thank the developers and as well the trustee for the developers group who's done a lot of work in helping us get this agreement in shape for tonight. So just wanted to extend my thanks to them.
Thank you. Your Worship, just where is that in this agreement? I don't see it here. Is that a separate agreement where they will get regular updates?
We didn't attach the full agreement, so it may not have made it into the summary, but there is a clause in there that talks about regular updates and requests for meetings from the developers group.
Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. My my concern is, we got a long list of participants here. I think 8 or 9 of them willing to go. And we as council have to look after the big picture. So I would like to know is if all of the developers are paid up what they own the town before, we start giving allotment, whatever. Because I hear often that, they're behind in payments, development charge payments and everything else. So I think we should start with a clear slate, and that we, if they want to participate, that ante up whatever they own is if there's money outstanding. And I don't know, maybe Mr. Rayner or somebody can elaborate on this, but I'm not sure whether anybody owes us money, but I hear lots of times, there's money owed, and if these developers owe us money, I think they should pay up before we start allotting sewage, before we start dividing it up.
Mr. Melanishin?
Through your worship to Councillor Van Berkel, yes, there's many moving parts. There's essentially two different agreements going that are all aligned together, and that will tie back and work with the finance department to ensure that all the developers' accounts are up to date before we move forward with the final agreement and signing of these projects. And definitely agree, there's leveraging that we're using as well to ensure that these accounts and outstanding receivables are paid up and collected. So we are handling that behind the scenes as well as part of the developer group discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment to thank Mr. Parkin, Mr. Melanishin, and Mr. Rayner. It's been a long haul, 3-ish years of negotiations, and it looked like a stalemate there for quite a while. So thank you so much for making this happen, and thank you to the development group for being good corporate citizens, and I think that this will be a win-win for the residents and for everyone else involved. So thank you for your hard work. Deputy Mayor, you never did get a seconder, I don't think. Was it Councillor Van Berkel's your seconder? Okay. Any other questions or comments on this agreement? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Next, we have item D1, and that was Councillor Fowler.
I need just a quick question on some the document that we were given tonight for the council agenda. I'm looking at the Town Square project, and the numbers are shifting as they move forward, and I understand that there have been some changes. I just want some clarification. If we can get it, it'd be appreciated. At the base of page 2, the total number for the phase 1 project is $6.133 million. Then if you go down to the top of page 3, it jumps up by it jumps up to $8.357 million. It's a change of $2.24 million. Now, I understand there's some delays and whatnot, but what would cause such a dramatic increase in the cost of the phases? Like, I understand it's shifted from phase 2 to phase 1, but what would bring about such a change? Because it's not really described too much in the report.
Ms. Goodwin? You're on mute, I think. Oh, you were off, now you're back on again. There you go.
Sorry, through you, your worship. I'm just trying to find, it's hard without the 2 screens. The report numbers. There's the 6 million that is the existing approved budget, and then the other amount that we're requesting in the 2021 budget is the 4.5.
Okay. Yes, but at the same time, what I'm reading on the report is that the phase 1 scope cost estimate is listed at $8.357 million, right? So there's a significant difference there. And where did that come to be? Because it says, to date, from the design workshop and refined project requirements, preliminary cost estimates have been completed by Rutherford's design build team for all project amenities are as follows. And then the numbers jumped up by over $2 million. So I'm just wondering where this change came to be. Now, is it something is it cost of materials, or is it something that's changed dramatically, or is it time frame? Are we moving ahead with something else?
Ms. Goodwin, do you have it in front of you?
I'm sorry, I can't find the 8 million on this. What page was that, Councillor?
It's page 3 of 5 in the report.
I'm sorry, I can't find the 8 million.
I can't either. Which
Okay,
paragraph?
it's on the page 3 of 5. It's under Parks 25, Town Square Project Parks 25. It's okay. So we got to the staff report, then you go down to the Town of Innisfil staff report, then it's the third page on that particular report. Staff report DSR 076-20.
Oh, the previous report.
Ah.
So if my memory serves me correctly, I don't have the previous report in front of me right now. There was, with phase 1, in the last report, we did report to council that we will need additional money for phase 1. So you are correct. So the 8 million, I don't have the exact number in front of me because I don't have the report, but yes, so phase 1, we possibly will require additional funding for phase 1, but the total project, if council were to approve phase 2, would still be the same number that we're projecting in regard to the budget.
That I understand. My question is, what has changed between phase 2 and phase 1? What is being escalated? What is being moved forward that it would cause an increase of over $2 million shifted from the phase 2?
It was more so that when we looked at everything that we had included in the first phase, everything that was included in the first phase for the consultant and architect, that the numbers of those ice rink and features that were included in the phase 1, that they totaled more.
Okay. Now, let's just say this goes through and we have the federal government grant, because further down the page it says, as noted in DSR 157-19, staff have applied the Community Culture and Recreation Fund under the federal government's Investing in Canada Infrastructure Plan for 73.33%, approximately $3.431 million of the total estimated phase 2 project cost of $4.68 million. If we go ahead with the $8 million and the second phase is only listed at 2.4, how much of the 3.43 does it still go retroactively into the project after the fact if the government gives us this particular grant?
We didn't get the grant, Councillor. In fact, I don't know anybody who got a grant. I've been asking around to find out who got it.
Okay, well that answers that question. Thank you.
So this will come back during budget. Like, we're not making decisions about whether or not we're going through for phase 2 now. This is just a request or a receive it as an update. And when we do the budget, that's when we'll have the debate as to whether or not we want to include it as one project and include phase 2. Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask for clarification of your statement, Your Worship. You're saying that this is going to, how do I put this? That there is going to be no works done. This is coming all to the budget, even for phase 1, because we've already started the preliminary work of the tree clearing. So nothing else is going to happen in phase 1 until it comes to the budget. Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I was saying. We've already approved phase 1, right?
Right.
That's already been approved, but I'll let Ms. Goodwin answer.
Yes, correct. Phase one, the budget of the 6 million has been approved, and that's what we're into with our current contract. So when Councillor Fowler was talking about the 8, it's just that first phase of the work that we first awarded that we understand it could be more than the original $6 million. So if we don't get approval for the whole project with the 2021 budget request, then we will have to go back and look at that first phase.
Okay.
Councillor Sadi?
Thank you.
You're on mute.
Thank you. You may want to mute me. So a question then. I know it's an approved budget, and the approved budget for phase 1 was $6,133,316.44. That was with capital investment of $500,000, ARS, Alternative Revenue Service, of $113,331. DC, the key part, is $5,519,985. So my question that I had sent to our Deputy Finance Clerk, Audrey Webb, was, do we currently, I just want clarification on the DC money. I know the project was approved in phase 1. I agree with the phase 1. We've got 110 seniors in a building right beside this who are isolated, who have no opportunity and no physical ability to get to the park. They try to walk, those that can maneuver, either on their scooters or walking on St. Paul Road where I live. And that when we look at an outdoor activity, especially with the pandemic and COVID, this is where people are going to have to be. So I'm going to have a follow-up question, and probably from our CAO on, or someone on the COVID restrictions, if and when it goes in, if during COVID, that there is the numbers that you can't have so many people together. How would we manage having the restrictions on this project?
Councillor, I'm sorry, but if we're talking about, like, I don't want to re-debate and reopen up a recommendation that's already been passed. So I get what you're asking. So you're suggesting that has COVID changed the project? Is that your question?
No, my question is, will it change how it's used? Like, I guess the parameters, is there going to be restrictions on how it's used? Is one question.
CAO Rayner?
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Sadi. The entire growth team, actually, Councillor Sadi right now is reviewing the various reports and research that's being done and best practices that are being adopted as a result of the pandemic. So you know, the short answer is yes. It will impact the design of all of our infrastructure moving forward. It could be a very simple thing like the spacing of benches, for example. You know, we may have had 2 benches very close together before, and now we'll have them apart, 6 feet apart. You know, that kind of thing. But as a number of councillors have already noted, and you yourself, that, you know, the need for outdoor space, we have realized is just absolutely so critical. And so the design is flexible enough to be able to adapt to those needs. And as more of that design moves forward and those updates keep flowing to council, you'll get a better perspective, as we do, about how that will be implemented.
And then, thank you, Mr. Rayner. A follow-up just on the financial, because that seems to be the question of the night. I know the project has been approved, and I just wonder where we are financially with this, because with the DC, we had the DC money set aside before, and then we reallocated that funds to the Rosardo Center to help with the, you know, paying that and collecting. So I'm just wondering, currently today, do we have the money in the reserves for the DC charges to pay for this?
Madam Treasurer?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Orsatti. So yeah, originally this project was we contemplated using the municipal capital facilities money. But since this project is a growth project, we wanted to optimize using or utilizing development charges money, and we repurposed the municipal capital facilities money to the Resarda. So because it's growth, this is 100% growth. You know, we'll collect those from development charges. Currently, we're projecting, you know, for the end of 2021, we have approximately, like, our current cash flows and estimates, and they change, of course, about $1.6 million in that particular DC reserve fund. Now, it does go into a deficit slightly in 2022, about $2 million, but you know, that's really all dependent on our growth forecasts, you know, that we're using. They could change for the better, for the worse. And in terms as well, I mean, that's those are the numbers we're sort of working with now as we are building the budget. But those things will all be considered by council when you review the 21-22 budget. And the other piece that I just wanted to mention is that when we consider, you know, the affordability of the capital program, we don't necessarily just look at individual development charge accounts. We look at our whole pot of development charge revenues, and they're very healthy. You know, they're, you know, the end of 2021, you know, $21 million, the end of 2022, $9 million. So we look at all those different pieces, and because it is growth, while we may not have the money in the bank today, or, you know, we will collect that money from development charges. So it will be paid for by growth dollars, and it will not impact the property tax levy or property tax owners, because it will be fully paid for by development charges.
Thank you for that explanation. I think also helps for residents to understand that DC money has to go for new projects, not to pay for existing ones that may need repair. So it's new amenities, I think it's, I don't know, I was doing some water, sewer, infrastructure, community centers, police, fire facilities, but new ones, not existing. So thank you for that explanation.
And that's correct, Councillor Orsatti. And it's the same, we went through the same argument when people were saying, why are you building a new library? Why aren't you spending the money on fixing my roads? So, and it's the same with DCs that are collected for certain purposes have to be spent on certain purposes as well. So yeah, that's a good point to bring up. Any other questions or comments on this item of information? Seeing none, we had a mover and a seconder. All in favor of receiving this as information? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll have, I'm sure, lots more discussion. If anybody's still with us, if God bless you if you are, we'll be having 2 full days of budget talks coming up later this quarter. Okay, next item was item D2, which was the Innisfil Beach Park Master Plan Vision Implementation. And that was pulled by Councillor Orsatti. And are you changing the recommendation, Councillor?
Yes, I am. And my seconder is our Deputy Mayor.
Okay.
Okay. In the report.
Do you want to put up your amendment then?
Can I state what I'm doing?
Well, if you want to put the recommendation up, if you're making a recommendation, you've got a mover and a seconder. Council should be able to see what it says.
Okay, so my recommendation is that we defer this item D2. The reason that I am requesting that we defer this item until the budget discussions is because the content of the report is inconsistent with the motion. And the reason I'm saying that is in this report, and I've pulled out all kinds of stuff that we had before, it states in the report that on council, and I think it was June when the park master plan was approved, that the council approved the several items. And one of them was to amalgamate a bunch of projects that totaled 2.58 million and change it all to a PKS 374. However, in those items, nowhere does it mention BMX pump track into PKS 374. Therefore, and when council voted on the park master plan vision, our CAO, Mr. Rayner, assured council that each one of those items that were the amenities in the park master vision, when they come to council, would be at budget time and they would be able to discuss this. I think changing the, amalgamating those items that were the docking system, fitness equipment, Innisfil beach, solar lighting, etc., is fine. But when you change it, it changes the content. So it's not receiving the report the way that council had voted on in June 24th. And if you're going to be adding items that are amenities, they should be discussed at budget. And I believe that this item should be deferred for being received until after the budget discussion. And then we can discuss the BMX pump track in this move to this item.
So I'm going to ask the clerk to help me here, but I don't know how you defer an item that you're just receiving for information.
Because the
Let me ask the clerk first, if I could, Councillor.
Thank you, Worship. So I'm not familiar with the report, but typically, if you're just receiving it for information, you're not approving any recommendations contained within, unless it's part of the motion that's on the floor.
So, but what the councillor is saying is that this item is inconsistent with what council passed previously. Is that what you're saying, councillor?
That's correct.
So is there somebody that can respond to the connection between the two? Mr. Kane.
Yes, Your Worship. I did have a conversation with Jessica Jenkins earlier today, and I think there's some technical issues there that are preventing her from joining this meeting. So I'm going to try and stumble through this.
There she is.
Oh, I feel relieved. Jessica, do you mind did you hear the question, Jessica, I guess, through Your Worship? Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, through Your Worship. Yes, our intent tonight was to inform council that we were planning to move forward with the BMX track. That being said, I think we could look at a couple of options if council wants a more thorough discussion on this. We could, and I'll let the clerk, or I'll ask Mr. Parkin if this is correct, but we could, I don't know if we can hold this report and bring forth a report for action at a later date as opposed to deferring to the budget discussions.
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Your Worship, I think, yes, you could defer the item and direct staff, defer it without specifying a date, but to ask staff to report back and then specify what you're asking for them to be reporting on.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. That's giving us a bit of direction. So Councillor Arcetti, what is it that you want them to report back on? The cost of the BMS pump track?
Well, see, this is, to me, it's all getting convoluted because My understanding was with the park master vision that each item would be coming to council at budget time. Council would look at the amenities that were in the vision to determine, staff would put a budget amount in it, and staff would be able to discuss those budget items. But this is being changed. So what I see is that staff have taken a budget item, amalgamated the amount together, and they're changing the items that were in that. So it was automated gated parking system, supply and install solar system, Innisfil Beach Park docking system, hydro and water, and amalgamate all those together to one PKS. But all of a sudden now we're looking at the removal of a concrete pier as immediate, and a BMX pump track, which were not part of the items that council approved the $2.587 million for.
Ms. Goodwin?
Yes, I might be able to clarify. So the amount that was amalgamated in the report in June, we held off on a bunch of projects for Innisfil Beach Park, waiting for the vision plan to be completed. So those are those projects that were all sitting there. They were projects that were approved. So when we put all those projects together in that report in June, we approved the total budget so that we could use that funds to implement the vision plan. So even though the BMX park pump track wasn't a previously approved project, it went in to implement now the vision plan. So to get things started, so we aren't waiting, we're recommending, we looked at the immediate recommendations of the vision plan, and the BMX pump track and the fitness equipment were in the immediate recommendations. And they are lower. There's not a lot of investigation work that needs to be done on those. So those are projects that could go forward before finalizing the implementation plan, which will actually detail the rest of the projects and the timing, et cetera, on those projects.
And can I ask why those two projects were picked? Was that as a result of what residents were asking for?
Yeah, so we looked at the recommendations from the vision plan. There was the immediate and there was the short recommendations, and the BMX pump track and the fitness equipment were in the immediate recommendations, and they don't require as much investigation work. So like, the pier would require significant environmental approvals and some geotechnical investigations. So that one's not an easy one to get started on. So those other two projects, the projects that we're saying could go ahead, they're kind of low-lying fruit. We could actually get going on those right away.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councillor Ices?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I agree with Councillor Sadi in when I read the report in the agenda, I went back and I rewatched the YouTube session of our June 24th meeting, and in it, we never really had a chance to approve individually. It was a vision, and we were assured at that point that we would have a chance to talk about how this vision would be brought forward. So now all of a sudden things are being prioritized in a way that I'm having trouble following as well. If we put things in that are just easy to put in, and we look at what our residents' feedback, and those aren't high priorities for them, I just think there needs to be a lot more information brought forward to our residents to explain how things are going, instead of putting them all together and saying, well, this has been approved and the vision has been approved, but not how it's being brought forward. So I agree with Councillor Sadi, and I think we should I'm not sure we have a seconder for this motion, but I think we should really get back to the motion that's on the table and talk about that instead of the details.
Okay, so did you have a seconder? Yes, you did have a seconder, which was Deputy Mayor Davidson. Okay, so the motion to refer, any other comments on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? I can't see, sorry. How many are in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favor. Those opposed? 2 opposed. That's carried. Next that takes care of all of our items for this evening. So the next is our
Your Worship, I think Lee's trying to get your attention.
oh, sorry, Mr. Parkin.
For Your Worship, we were going to add wording on what you wanted to report back on, and then so just wanted to make sure we were clear on what. So it's on options related to the BMX pump track. Is that?
Why don't we just leave it and say leave it for options, and then let staff come back with what the options are after going through all the surveys and the who voted for what and how many people want what. And does that suit? Okay. Is that going to be enough information? I think we just needed to come back with, you know, a more fulsome, and when it's not, you know, 20 to 11. CEO Rayner.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you to Council. So we'll come back. We apologize. I think there's a missing step here, which Councillor Sadi has rightly pointed out, and we apologize for that. I think in an effort to, I think as we look at the calendar and the runway for 2020 is vanishing, you know, our engineering team was just very excited to try to get this project moving forward. We know the community has waited a long time, and with Council finally approving the vision, I think they wanted to get moving with tendering, but we appreciate that there's some more detail required here. And you know, given all of the changes with the pandemic, it's fair that Council wants to look closely at the prioritization of those specific projects, not just the overarching program. So we're happy to bring back a staff report that seeks direction. We'll do that shortly. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Rayner. I think it's important for us to also look back at all of the consultation and engagement that was done through the process too. And I'm happy to have as much discussion as you want on each item. I'm not prepared to go back and reconsider for a motion of reconsideration for the whole vision again. Like, we've got past that. So now we need to move forward, and you know, sometimes you win votes and sometimes you don't, and it is what it is. And I've got to tell you, over my experience, sometimes the votes that you don't win, you're in the end, like when you look back at it, you're happy you didn't. So I'm just saying that we'll go through each item as much as you want, but not the motion that was passed in June. Councillor Orsatti?
I think that I'm just listening to your statement there, that this is not about trying to rip apart a master plan that the majority of council voted on. We know that's in place, but all of council understood, my understanding, that we would look at the amenities that were all recommended. It wasn't sanctioned that all 43 were approved. The vision is, but maybe not all the items.
Absolutely, and we'll have lots of discussion with that in the budget as well. Any other comments or questions on the motion to refer? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. Obviously, good debate tonight throughout the entire evening. Just procedurally, I'm actually looking at the past agendas online, and I can't see where we received the June 24th agenda or minutes. I've gone back through August and September and July, and I can't find where we actually received the minutes from that June 24th meeting.
Okay, thank you for bringing that forward. I'm sure clerks are making notes of that, and we'll, if it did get missed, it'll be on the next agenda. Any other questions or comments?
Just staff were able to help me out with that, Councillor Nickel, when I sent emails with questions.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the referral? Oh, we already had that vote, didn't we? Yeah, we did. It was 6 and 2. Yeah, I remember. Okay. Next item is consideration of adoption of the recommendations from the Committee of the Whole. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Fowler and Councillor Van Berkel. All those in favor? That is carried. And consideration of adoption of the recommendations. Didn't we just do that? I'm getting tired. Help me out, Mr. Clerk.
We just did that.
Okay, so any motions, notice of motions to be given this evening? Seeing none. Announcements. Any announcements from members of council? Councillor Orsatti?
I believe, Your Worship, you're going to be starting the Lemonade Challenge. This is in support. I think it started from our MPP, Andrea Kenjan, and then Challenge Barry. The MP, John Brassard, got on board. Barry Council, I think one of the members there challenged me. I believe that, and this is taking lemons and for cancer survivors and those that are getting support, taking a bitter moment and how did they take that and turn it around and make lemonade. So with this, it's about the challenge of taking a lemon, making the lemonade that the instructions are through, I believe, through the Gildas Club Simcoe Muskoka, and just putting change in it, and you know that through simple dollars with the challenge of having others do the same thing, that you know, every little dollar helps those suffering with cancer, and Gildas Club.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. Just a reminder to those traveling the roads that it's a busy time for farmers with harvest happening, and just to have a little patience around equipment moving up and down the roads as we're trying to get the work done before, as we're into the fall season. So just a reminder there.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, farmers feed cities, and we live in a farm community, and people need to remember that. Any other announcements for this evening? Seeing none, we'll ask for the confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor Orsatti and seconded by Councillor Ices. All those in favor? That is carried. And adjournment, Councillor Nickel, Councillor Fowler, thanks everybody for your extra effort tonight, and we got through it so we don't have to come back another night, which is good. Thanks. If any of you are out there still watching, God bless you and have a good rest of the evening. Thank you. Bye.
Good night.